Ladies and gents, boys and girls, Friday, TGIF. Hope you're all doing well. Chris Phillips here, your host of the Daily Crow of the Spurs Up Show. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. I see John Edward, Will Hall, Todd Smith, Brendan. What's going on? Also, those in the Big Cock Club Discord, however, the TDC Questions channel, the TDC Questions channel. To be sure your questions are answered there. Guys, we've got a packed show, a lot to get into here on this Friday as we get back to a normal noon to 3 schedule. I know the last couple of weeks, or excuse me, the last couple of days, I should say, have been kind of crazy with noon to 2, noon to 3, guests moving around. Hey, we're calling another audible today, by the way, because Jake Crane cannot join us at 1:15. He's doing some things with Crane and Company, but Mark Ryan, we've got Mark Ryan at 1:15, our special guest today. In our second hour, of course, our third hour will be our Q&A power hour, back to the normal third hour being Q&A. And then, of course, in this first hour, we got a couple of things we're going to discuss. We will wrap up the top 5 series as we talk top 5 best kickers in Gamecocks football history, and we continue our SEC football team previews. And my good friend Sean of Horn Takes, we talk Texas football. Hook 'em horns, right? Horns down. No, I didn't do that to Sean. I couldn't do it. Austin Gregory, what's up? Stephanie Lee, appreciate you. Brendan M says, Slapdick C. Philly. 5-7, Jake strikes again. Also really interesting, though, and really fun is that I did speak with Jake this morning, not for the Daily Crow in regards to our normal, Friday guest appearances, what have you. But we're doing these SEC team previews, and I figured for Auburn, who better to have on than an Auburn man himself, Jake Crane. So next week, you'll hear from Jake Crane as we talk the Auburn Tigers. We'll probably air that one on Monday, and I'll give you a little secret. Jake Crane has Auburn going 8-4 this year. So if he's got Auburn going 8-4, I wonder what he's picking for South Carolina. 8-4 in year one of Hugh Freeze. That would be nothing short of a massive, massive success for that program. But again, guys, appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. And thank y'all so much for the continued love and support here on this Friday. Hope you had a fantastic week, and I hope you guys have a great weekend planned. Again, guys, I'm so excited. As much fun as we've had with these top 5 lists, the top 5, everything. It's list season, right? We've been talking about it with JC this morning. Really excited to be done with it and sort of move forward in the offseason, and we'll get into July 4th. And then, guys, we'll finally get to the 2023 season preview content as we get into predictions, breaking down offense, defense, special teams, opponent previews. And from there, guys, we're off and running, right? So, again, I see Robbie Davis. Appreciate y'all tuning in. Thank y'all so much, man. Truly appreciate it. This has been a fantastic week. And like I said, guys, we have got an electric conversation lined up for you guys as we continue the SEC team previews. My guy, Sean Redfern. That's how you say his last name. I was wondering. I had a brain fart earlier. What's his last name again? Sean Redfern of Horn Takes. And I'll tell you this. Sean has a really nice presence on TikTok, about 3,500 followers, what have you. But this is a dude I did not realize from talking to him. And I think this speaks to just how good he is and how natural he is at doing this. I didn't realize he didn't have some big platform, big following. The guy has 3. Yes, 3. Not 3,000, not 30,000. 3 followers on Twitter. I don't even think he's on Instagram. And he's got 20 followers or 20 likes on Facebook. So he's just getting started. But I tell you what, Sean, you wouldn't know it. This dude had an electric conversation, like I mentioned. Great insight on Texas football going into this season. So, guys, sit back, relax, enjoy as we continue our SEC team previews with Sean Redfern of the Horn Takes podcast. Y'all enjoy. As we continue our SEC team previews heading into the 2023 football season, we shift gears a little bit to a future member of the SEC, Hook 'em Horns, the Texas Longhorns, and our friend Sean of the Horn Takes podcast. He joins us today to talk all things Texas football, and I figure why not a year early, right? We all know Texas, Oklahoma coming to the league. The 2024 schedules are out, and I just could not help myself, Sean. We had to bring you on, especially after our great conversation on Monday, my friend. I appreciate you taking the time. What is going on? How are you?
I'm doing well, man. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. Excited to talk SEC football. I'm excited. I'm glad that, I'm kind of glad baseball's over for Texas because now I can kind of refocus on football and recruiting. I wish we were still playing baseball. What a hell of a College World Series so far this has been.
Dude, every game's like a one-run game. And then, of course, the time that we're talking right now tonight, we get Paul Skeens and Rhett Lauder, two of the best pitchers in all of college baseball. And you got premier programs, obviously, with LSU and Florida, and then Wake Forest, what they're doing is the number one overall seed. It's crazy, man. The College World Series is wild. But I agree with you, as a South Gunna fan, we were right there on the edge of the Super Regionals. And it's like, if your team's not in a College World Series right now, it's like, this is truly the dog days of the offseason, which, again, is why I'm glad we're having this conversation and we're conversating. So, Sean, again, really excited to talk Texas football going this season. But before we do, though, let's look back at 2022, year two of Steve Sarkisian. Texas goes 8-5, 6-3 in the conference. They lost to Washington in the Alamo Bowl. But what really, Sean, stands out to me looking back at the schedule, a 1-point loss to Alabama, a 3-point loss to Texas Tech in overtime, a 7-point loss at Oklahoma State, and a 7-point loss to TCU, who obviously played for the national championship, and then a 7-point loss in the bowl game. So Texas did not lose a game by more than one score a season ago. Just talk about the 2022 season and what it was to the Longhorns.
Yeah, I think the 2022 season was a good step for Steve Sarkisian and the Texas Longhorns. They definitely needed to go out on the field and prove that they could compete a little better in some of these games. I know the year before they had a lot of games in the bag and they sort of let them slip away. We saw a little bit of that this year in 2022, but they were able to hold on to some of those. So we obviously had we had the Baylor game that was touch and go there late. We had the Kansas State game where we got a big lead and then Kansas State started roaring back on us. So the team has showed improvement. They've proven that they now know how to win some of these close games. And I think the next step for this Texas team and Steve Sarkisian is to continue to build on that recruiting momentum that he's had. The last two recruiting cycles have been really good for them, and not just good, like good in the right spots. We talked on the show Monday. You got to have trench guys. You got to have defensive line. You got to have offensive line to win in the SEC and really anywhere in college football, but especially important in the SEC. And he has really spent a ton of time devoting recruiting to those two areas. There's a lot of depth there now. It's really young. It's really inexperienced. And I think the next step for them is to continue to layer depth in behind that. And obviously these guys are going to get more experience. So I think overall for Texas fans, I feel like we left some on the table. We should have beat Tech. We should have beat Oklahoma State. Sometimes that's the way it goes. The bowl game is a bowl game. We had a lot of key guys out, obviously, and I'm sure Washington did too. And I'm sure there's a lot of teams across the country that kind of have to deal with that. But the interesting thing that I didn't know at bowl time was Jonathan Brooks had a sports hernia that he basically played with all season. So he ended up being the starting running back in that game. He wasn't even close to healthy. So all in all, I think it was a great season in 2022 for Texas. Maybe not great, but it's definitely a positive step for Texas and Steve Sarkisian. I think this season is really important, and we'll probably go into this a little later, but this is a really important season for this roster and this coaching staff, especially as we talk about this move into the SEC.
Yeah, Sean, you mentioned Steve Sarkisian. I want to stick with that. 5-7 in year one, 8-5 in year two. So like you mentioned, the progression is there. What's the feelings around Steve Sarkisian going into year three? Like you mentioning, the recruiting is picking up. Obviously, he was a hot name hire. And of course, year one, though, going 5-7, but a hot name hire, no doubt. What's the vibe around Sark going into, like you mentioned, what is a pivotal year three for him and his coaching staff?
Yeah, I think the vibe around Austin and just Texas fans in general regarding Sark is I think we really like him. I know for me personally, I like how his attention to culture. I think, you look at Steve Sarkisian and he's coached for a lot of really good coaches, but I think when you talk about college football, you got Nick Saban is just, if you can work for Nick Saban and you don't take that opportunity and don't take full advantage of that, you've absolutely shorted yourself. And then he also has a lot of experience coaching with Pete Carroll, who I think if you look at Pete Carroll, you look at Nick Saban, they're kind of on opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of how they manage their programs. So I think he's probably been able to sit back and learn a lot from both of those guys. But the thing I think he draws a lot on from Nick Saban is the culture piece of it. He wants guys that want to come to Texas to play for Texas, not just guys that are looking for big NIL deals, not just guys that are looking for a lot of attention during the recruiting process. He's really dialed in on getting guys that fit that culture, teaching them that you got to come in here and you got to work hard. And I think we're starting to see, some of the benefits of that culture. And it takes a while you got a program that's been, Texas was pretty bad for 10 years. Definitely not what Texas fans want and what the Texas administration wants out of their football program. And it takes time to rebuild that. And I think, Tom Herman, for all his goodness on the field, like he's a smart guy. He understands football. I think he lacked really severely in that culture department. And I think his main goal was to sign the best class he could, regardless of whether it was the right fit for the team at the time. And I think that's the difference between Steve Sarkisian and Tom Herman at this point. As far as going into this 2023 season, you mentioned the recruiting. He did have a ton of momentum coming out of Alabama. He's had relationships with a lot of these kids for a long time. He's obviously, put guys in the league. He's had Heisman Trophy winners that he's been responsible for at both USC and at Alabama. So he has a whole lot of capital from a football perspective with a lot of young players across the country. And so for this year, I think it's put up or shut up time almost for Steve Sarkisian. That capital is not going to last forever if you don't take what you have, go out on the field, and start winning something important, right? So I think for Texas and Steve Sarkisian this year, that means you go out and you really need to win about 10 games, and you really need to win the Big 12. And I think if you can figure out a way to beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa, that would be huge, huge, huge from this program. Not just from a sort of, hey, we belong and we can play with these top-notch teams, but also from a recruiting perspective.
So, Sean, as we turn our attention to the 2023 football season for Texas, let's start on the offensive side. The quarterback room is loaded with Quinn Ewers returning as a starter, but you've got Malik Murphy, a 5-star, and, of course, Arch Manning. Everybody knows that name. The big departure is Bijan Robinson, who fills in at the running back position. That's a question mark. But you got some big-time outside targets returning in Xavier Worthy, Jordan Whittington, and you add, by the way, Adonai Mitchell from the portal from the University of Georgia. Not a bad pickup there. Also, first-team All-Big 12 tight end Jatavion Sanders is back. And the big kicker here, anytime I see this, Sean, I think to myself, okay, this is an offense that's primed for success anytime you have all 5 of your offensive linemen back. I mean, that's where it starts, right? That's the foundation. So in regards to the Texas offense in 2023, it sounds like the sky is the limit, especially if Quinn Ewers can take that next step under center.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, there's a couple keys on the offensive side for me. Who do we find to replace all of that production from Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson leaving, which, by the way, Roschon Johnson is one hell of a running back. If that kid was at almost any other school and wasn't playing behind Bijan Robinson, he'd be like a absolute feature guy. And I've said it on my show, and I'll say it on this show. I think depending on how they're utilized, I think Roschon Johnson might have a better NFL career than Bijan Robinson. I think his game translates a lot better to the NFL than in college. We'll see how that goes. And that may be a crazy horn take, but that's the one I got anyway. So we got to figure out how we replace that production at running back. And I think you nailed it with Quinn Ewers. I don't think Quinn Ewers needs to feel like he has to come in and win games for Texas. I think there's plenty of weapons around him that if he can just manage the game, get the ball out to the right person at the right time, and protect the football, I think that's all he has to do. Talent-wise, this is probably one of the most talented offenses I've ever seen at Texas, and that's saying a lot outside of the QB position. So, the offensive line is key. That's a giant. You got Kelvin Banks, who was a freshman All-American, and he could probably he may end up being an All-American just period this year. That guy is good. And then another guy at right tackle is Christian Jones. Christian Jones has been a guy that's been at Texas for a while. He's a senior this year. He's played quite a bit, but he's never really been what anybody would call, good. He struggled a lot early in his career at Texas. Kyle Flood comes in, and it takes about a year for him to develop into a really, really solid right tackle. And I think he's got a chance to play in the NFL. And then you've got a ton of young guys. That class they brought in 2 years ago, just loaded with young, big, strong, athletic offensive linemen. So the foundation is there, as you said. And then you look at the wide receiver position. You mentioned X, you mentioned A.D. Mitchell, Jordan Whittington. It was a huge comeback for Texas. Like getting him back was massive. And then you got like Isaiah Nair, who was a huge transfer for Texas before the season last year, blew his knee out in fall camp. He never got a chance to play a second. He's another guy, I think, that's in that same mold as A.D. Mitchell. Long, tall, fast, athletic, a jump ball type guy. He's everything into one. We talk about speed guy, possession guy. Him and A.D. Mitchell are both to me. And then you got a couple freshmen coming in, Jonte Cook and DeAndre Moore, who was a last-second flip from Louisville to Texas. So, again, just the talent-wise, it's all there. I think one of the things that I sort of struggled with Steve Sarkisian last year was in the running game, and how I almost think he got spoiled at Alabama. It's like at Texas, if he's not getting 6, 7, 8 yards a carry, he doesn't see it as a net gain. And so he relies on that passing game a lot. And I think the offensive line's ready to create some holes. And I think we saw it a lot in the last half of the season last year when he didn't have a choice. When Quinn Ewers wasn't playing well, he had to turn to that running game. And the Baylor game is a perfect example. They almost didn't throw the ball at all in the second half of that game. After that turnover that Baylor ran back for a touchdown, it was running game consistently after that. And they just jammed it down Baylor's throat. And I think they can do that again, but he's going to have to learn to stick with it and not, and this is my assumption. I just feel like there's no other reason for it. He's not getting these massive explosive plays all the time with it. So in his mind, as he's processing the game, it just doesn't seem like it's working.
Now, Sean, on the defensive side, a defensive line returns for Texas that led college football in quarterback pressures a season ago. Barron Sorrell up front. Also big Devondre Sweat, the senior at the nose tackle position. Jalen Ford, your leading tacklers back in the middle at the linebacker position. You got Jaron Thompson, a veteran player in the back end. You also pick up corners Gavin Holmes from Wake and Jalen Catalon from Arkansas, which is the big one. And it makes sense because I was looking at the numbers, Sean. Texas only surrendered 21.6 points per game, which ranked 27th in the country, but the number that sticks out, 242.7 yards per game through the air, 90th in college football. So it makes sense why obviously Sark would go to the portal and pick up Holmes and Catalon. What you're expecting from the Longhorns defense in this upcoming season?
Yeah, I think what I expect is for the defensive line, especially on the edge, to take that next step for Texas. Really, since Joseph Osai was at Texas, we haven't had a guy that could get off the edge and create any kind of pressure. And I think you saw it a lot last year. And even though Texas did lead the nation in pressures, the majority of it was from up the middle. Those defensive tackles, again, you got to credit Bo Davis. You got to credit this staff. It's the same guys that were on that year one team, the 5-7 team, and they come back this next season and just a totally different team. That team got ran over in the run game in Sark year one, and in year two they were stout. And I think part of that was because teams figured they could pass on us. That was obviously a little bit of it, but I think again the guys are in place. You mentioned Barron Sorrell. This will be really his second year starting, and he made a lot of great strides. He needs to take it to that next level. And I don't know if you're ever going to have two guys like Dallas Turner or that other kid at Alabama that are just constantly in the backfield, but you got to have it enough, right? You got to have, and especially on key downs like third and longs, I don't know if you understand the history of 3rd and long for Texas defense, and this goes back to the Tom Herman, maybe even into the Charlie Strong era. It's the most unbelievable thing I've ever seen, how many 3rd and longs that this team will give. They gave up 2 in the Texas Tech game that were 3rd and a quarter of the field. One was an actual completion for a first down, and the other one was a pass interference play on just the, almost a Hail Mary type play. So I think we helped the defensive backfield by getting more pressure up front. We're going to be a little thinner at tackle, but I think the tackle play is good there, and I think there's some good guys in behind them as well. Linebacker is a huge key. We got Anthony Hill Jr. that's projected to start at the strong linebacker position. You mentioned Jalen Ford. What a year he had. That's another guy that just sort of out of the blue. Jalen Ford's been in the program for a while, and he played, but he never was flashing the way he flashed last year. I think Jalen Ford outplayed DeMarvion Overshown by a mile last year. He saved so many games for Texas, caused so many turnovers. It was kind of like watching Derek Johnson from back in the early Mac Brown era. He was just everywhere and making plays all over the field. So getting him back was huge. Obviously, weak side linebacker, we got to replace Demo, and it looks like it's going to be David Benda. He's a senior, a redshirt senior. Maurice Blackwell is another guy that might fit into that role, a junior. So lots of talent there. And again, I think you talk about getting pressure off the edge. Ethan Burke is a guy. I don't know if you're familiar with his recruitment. This is a lacrosse guy. Like, he played all Westlake lacrosse. He played football. He's on state championship teams. But he kind of took a backseat to Colton Vosick, who's another Texas commit out of the last class, as far as just sort of the dominant defensive end on the team. But he's like 6'7", and when he got to Texas, he weighed like 215 pounds. He had lacrosse scholarships all over the country, so he's athletic, right? And he ended up committing to play football at Michigan. Somehow we got in on that commitment, got him flipped at the last minute. And the second he went on the field, he played a lot early last year. You could just see, man, that dude belongs up here. And for a freshman to play defensive end is something else, right? So he played quite a bit, and now he's transformed his body, and he's got that good coaching from Bo Davis for the last year. He's going to end up starting at the other end, and I think he's going to cause problems. He is so long. Again, he's 6'7". He's got arms down to his knees. He's the type of guy that, you just can't get your hands on him. And once he figures out how to use his hands and use leverage, he's strong, he's fast. He's going to be a damn good defensive end. And I think that's going to, again, help the back end. You mentioned the secondary. We went out and got Gavin Holmes. I don't know a ton about him. I know he was, one of the higher rated transfer portal guys from a defensive back perspective. And then Jalen Catalon, that's an all SEC guy. And the only reason he doesn't continue to be an all SEC guy is because he was injured a lot. So hopefully him coming to Texas, taking some time off, getting healed up, hopefully he can bring that, that same type of all SEC play to Texas for their last Big 12 season. I'm really excited about him. I think the secondary's in a good spot. You mentioned Jaron Thompson. He's outstanding. Jahdae Barron's another guy that's just really good back there. Ryan Watt's a really big, boundary cornerback. I would like to see the secondary produce more turnovers. That's one thing they didn't do a very good job of, was intercepting the ball. I think part of that is just learning a new defense and trying to get new people in right places and all that stuff. I expect that to be a lot better. My main concern, I think, heading in is, can we reproduce that run defense that we had last year? Because I think that's always really important. If you stop the run, you get people in situations they absolutely don't want to be in, and it makes playing defense easier.
Yeah, Sean, to your point, I was just looking over these numbers. I think for Texas, just converting, right? The talent is there, but converting in 2023 led the nation in quarterback pressures last season, but finished tied for 71st in sacks with 27. And then to your point, what you just mentioned, Texas finished tied for 104th nationally with 14 forced turnovers. They broke up 51 passes, but only 10 interceptions and only recovered 4 of 11 fumbles. So, I mean, the talent is there, but just converting when you get the opportunities, and turnovers can be kind of a fickle thing. But putting yourself in position, and when you get in that position, capitalizing on it, obviously going to be a huge key for Texas this season. Let's move to the special teams, Sean. You got your kicker, Burt Auburn, back, who was really good last year, 21 of 26 a season ago. Ryan Sanborn comes over from Stanford. He averaged 41.6 yards per punt for them a season ago. Xavier Worthy and Keelan Robinson in the return game. Just talk about what stands out for Texas in the special teams game this season.
Yeah, I think, we talked about special teams when you and I talked on Monday, and how that, to me, that's like that's a game-changing part of the game. If you could create big plays on special teams, it's like a bonus, right? It's kind of like shooting free throws when the getting points when the clock isn't going in basketball. It's that same type of effect on a game. I don't know, I've never seen Ryan Sanborn punt, but his stats are really good, much better than we had last year. Burt Auburn, you mentioned him, the haircut, man, that dude's hair is insane. But yeah, he kicked really well. One thing that worries me about, and I don't know if it's a strategic type thing by Texas or if it's a leg strength issue, but I would like to see more touchbacks. I don't see any reason why you would want to let a guy, as talented as some of these players are, let a guy get his hands on the ball on a kickoff, or a punt return if you can control it, for that matter. So I would like to see, more of that. Hopefully they've worked on that. I almost think in some situations they were trying to kick it right at the goal line and try to, stop them inside the 25, which I think, if you can do it, that's great. But if they get loose, it's not worth it, in my opinion. So I'd like to see that change. You mentioned, Worthy. He's a guy that's just electric with the ball in his hands and in tight spaces. That's really his game. Last year, X kind of got used as a down the field guy for Texas because they really didn't have anybody else that could get down the field. His game is more Oklahoma first play of 2021. Get him the ball now and let him go. And I'm sure you know the play I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. He caught the ball, made one move, and outran everybody for a touchdown on the very first play of the game. That's Xavier Worthy. He can do the same thing in the punt return game. And then you got Keelan Robinson. And Keelan Robinson, to me, he's a double threat guy because he can block kicks. I think he blocked a couple kicks last year for Texas. So he's a guy that they move him all around on punt blocks, and he just messes things up for people. And he has a nose to get back there and make a clean block. So I'm excited about seeing him on kick returns as well as trying to block some kicks. And we talked about Jonte Cook and DeAndre Moore. Those are a couple guys they're looking at to back those two up at those return positions. And both of those guys, Jonte Cook especially, is almost like an Xavier Worthy clone in terms of size and just once he gets the ball in a tiny bit of space, it's tough to get him.
So, Sean, it feels like Texas is the team to beat in the Big 12 this season. 15 starters return, 9 on offense, 6 on defense. Let's take a look at the 2023 schedule and how it shakes out. You open up with Rice at home, then that big Week 2 matchup at Alabama, which I think could serve, to your point, as a great launching pad, if you will, to the SEC coming up in 2024. I think Texas can prove to a lot of people, hey, we belong in this conference, and this is sort of letting everybody know ahead of time. So at Alabama, in Tuscaloosa, Week 2, Wyoming at home, at Baylor, Kansas at home, the Red River Shootout against Oklahoma. I don't know if we're supposed to call it that, but I don't give a damn. I'm doing it. At Houston, BYU, Kansas State. Yeah, why not? Kansas State, at TCU, at Iowa State, Texas Tech. When you look at that schedule, how do you feel it shakes out for Texas to have the type of season that Longhorn Nation's hoping for this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think, first of all, you got to take care of business in those 2 out-of-conference games that aren't Alabama. And then, obviously, you want to go on the road and make a good showing. Winning that game would be huge for Texas, as I said before. And I think they have the ability to go win that game. They had the ability this last season to win that game. That was a really probably one of the best football games I've ever watched in person. And I'm looking forward to, never been to Tuscaloosa, but I'm looking forward to traveling out there to check that one out. So if Texas can manage to get that one in Alabama, I think that springboards them to just a really good season where they're a 10-11 win team. There's a couple of games in this new Big 12 schedule that kind of worry me. BYU, Texas and BYU, and really Texas has had just a rough time with BYU. Now there's just those teams. It doesn't make any sense, but you can't beat them. BYU is that one of those teams for Texas. So whatever it is, BYU just gets ready. The good news is they don't have the one-legged bandit that's playing for the Saints now to run all over them 2 years in a row with CL. And then another game, that Houston game, I think that's going to be, Houston wants their shot at Texas. It's been so long since they played, and Houston's got some talent, and they've got a crazy coach that he's not gonna back down from anybody. He's gonna have that team ready to play, and again they have talent. So there's some spots in that schedule where I think Texas needs to be really careful. If they get to Red River shootout time and they're undefeated or they're a one-loss team, and they take care of Oklahoma, the schedule sets up nicely for them to make a really good run. But we've seen it in the past where we've seen it in the past a lot where Texas has everything laid out in front of them perfect, and for whatever reason they just don't get it done. And I think that's a culture thing. And I think that's part of what Steve Sarkisian's changing at the University of Texas. So again, I think this is probably, for me, if this team doesn't win 10 games and doesn't play in the Big 12 championship game, then I think something went off track, whether it was injuries or, whatever the myriad of reasons could be that the team just doesn't live up to expectations. But to me, the expectation is 10 and play for the Big 12 title. I feel like I'm not real sure I think Texas Tech is doing some really good stuff. I think that's going to be a tough, final game for Texas. Joey McGuire's already made comments about, he thinks that's going to be a game that's going to decide who goes to play for the Big 12 championship, or could possibly be that. And I think he might be right. Joey McGuire is an interesting dude because I don't know that he's all that smart. I mean, they went for it like on 4th and whatever, like 8 times against Texas. They did it multiple times against Ole Miss, but I think the players just absolutely love him. I think he's just one of those rah guys that these guys, I mean, he could probably tell them to go, burn down buildings for him, and they would go do it, and they wouldn't even ask a question about it. He's that type of sort of leader. So just Tech, I don't know. They hate Texas, right? So they're always ready to play that game, and they always inexplicably have these guys that they find these sort of diamonds in the rough in the recruiting world that almost nobody really was looking at, and they become big time players. I like their offensive staff. Kittles, that guy's he knows how to put points on the board. So that's going to be a tough game. I think there's a lot of Texas fans that have it in their head that the team's going to be super pissed for losing that game in Lubbock last year, and sort of hearkening back to that 70-35 game in Austin the year before. I think a lot of Texas fans think that's going to happen. I would love for that to happen. I'm not so sure that does happen, though. If I'm Texas, I'm looking for a sort of a street fight in that one. So there's lots of potholes in that schedule. It's not a super tough schedule, at least on the surface. But again, for me, I'm kind of like, show me. We've seen this before where we don't have such a tough schedule, and we should have done this and should have done that, and we'd be playing for the Big 12 championship, and it just hasn't happened. And so I'm at the point now with this program where let's just go do it. Let's show that we can go do it. And again, I think those first 3 games are going to set the tone for the Big 12 schedule, and beating Alabama, or even just being competitive with Alabama for 2 years in a row. I think that sends a message to the rest of the world, and it's got to build confidence in that program that, yeah, last year wasn't a fluke. Like, we went into their house and we played a good game with them. If we win, who knows what happens? I mean, I could see this team going undefeated if they win that game. I could see it. Don't know that it'll happen.
Yeah, Sean, and a great segue to a couple of my last questions for you. First thing, do you think that Texas this season can be a college football playoff team? And just also, when I look at Texas's season, obviously the goals of this year, the expectations, winning the Big 12, but how important is this season for not just that, but setting the stage for transitioning into the SEC next year?
Yeah, I was kind of surprised. I saw a not so early or way too early bowl prediction article the other day. And I kept scrolling, and I didn't see Texas, and bam, there they are in the playoff. And I forgot who they had them matched up with, but I think talent-wise, there has not been a better roster at Texas in a very long time, and we're talking like probably in that 2005 to 2009, 2010 Texas era under Mac Brown. We have not had this talented of a roster. So from a talent perspective, this team actually absolutely has the pieces to go out and make a playoff. We just talked about the schedule. I think it sets up pretty nicely, but they're going to have to be focused through that schedule. And to me, that all goes back to the culture side of it, right? Like physically, as long as they can avoid injuries, and I know that's a big if in college football, you're going to have people nicked up, but if they can avoid like any just disastrous type injuries, I think they have a chance to wind up in the playoff. Now, for me, that's not my goal at this point. I think heading into next year, the playoff is much more conceivable for a couple of reasons. I think they'll have another year of good recruiting to layer talent in there, and also we're going to 12 teams, so that's obviously makes it easier. So I'm going to be a little bit wishy-washy on that one and say I think they can, but I'm certainly not calling for it. Now, as far as is this season, the importance, we talked about it a little bit earlier. Recruiting is king in college football. There's never been a national championship, at least in my lifetime. There's never been a national champion that just had dud players, right? All these teams that continue to go in and continue to compete at a very high level, they've got amazing rosters. And so that's like step number one almost for any football coach is to continue to build that roster and layer talent in behind that roster. And then you got to develop it, right? Because even though these guys are, even 5 stars, they're not developed. Most of them are not ready to just come in and dominate college football. So you got to develop them. And I think we're seeing that. We talked about multiple examples of that earlier when we were going through the roster. This year for Texas, again, they got to win. They got to keep that recruiting momentum going. So whatever that means, they definitely don't want to do things like lose to Kansas and turn recruits off from the program. That would be a huge step back. So for me, again, if Texas can manage to get 10 wins this year, they can manage to play for the Big 12 championship. Certainly, if they wind up in the college football playoff, they're going to keep that momentum. And I think what that means heading into 2024 is you're bringing a roster into that league that's ready to compete in that league, and you're bringing a roster that now has some experience, like actually winning something. And I think that's important. There's a lot of people and there's a lot of programs that just don't know how to win. They've got all the pieces they need, or at least most of the pieces they need, but they can't figure out how to actually get it done. And so getting it done is a huge step for being able to consistently get it done. And I think, again, that's what Steve's got to do this year. That's what the Longhorns have to do this year. Prove that you can go out on the field and get it done when it matters. You do that, you're going to get that recruiting momentum, keep that recruiting momentum, and then you're just in a much better spot to head into SEC play in 2024.
Sean, excited to see how it shakes out for Texas this upcoming season, and really excited for the Longhorns to come over to the SEC next summer. This time next summer, we'll be talking as SEC members, if you will, or Texas a member of the SEC. Going to be a great time. Sean, appreciate you doing this. Let everybody know where they can find your work and keep up with the Longhorns this season.
Yeah, you can check me out at Horn Takes Podcast. I do most of my I do podcasts. I throw them up on Buzzsprout. So what is it? Buzzsprout.horntakespodcast.com. If you go to that link, you'll see every podcast I've ever done, going back to just after Red River Shootout last year. There's about 56, 57 episodes at this point. I also stream everything live to YouTube, so you can find all that. I've even broke it down by multiple different sort of subjects, like the bullpens for baseball. From the cheap seats, we do football, hard court horns. Obviously, we're talking about basketball. So you can see all that stuff. You check out those different playlists. That's at Horn Takes on YouTube. You can find me on Twitter, which I don't tweet enough. I don't do enough of the social media stuff. I need to do better at that. I spend a lot of time on TikTok. You can find me there at Horn Takes. Try to do videos every day and put clips up from the shows. So yeah, man, I just like to talk about football. I like to talk about Texas Longhorn sports. got interested in it, started doing it, and here we are today. And man, I absolutely appreciate you having me on today. Just love to talk about sports.
Okay, that was our friend Sean Redfern of Horn Takes Podcast. And I appreciate Sean taking the time to chat, and really, really good stuff. Excited to see how Texas fares this season in the Big 12, and also obviously as they make their transition to the SEC. Excited for both Texas and OU to be in the best conference in all of collegiate sports. Guys, we're going to jump into a quick break. On the side, we'll keep the conversation rolling here on this Friday. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow. Attention all Gamecock seafood lovers. Are you tired of searching for the freshest seafood in town? Look no further than the Carolina Fish Market, your go-to destination for the finest and most flavorful seafood in the Carolinas and beyond. Introducing the new Carolina Seafood Subscription Box, a culinary delight delivered right to your doorstep. Each month, you'll receive a carefully curated selection of fresh local seafood sourced directly from the waters of the Carolinas and beyond. From succulent shrimp to mouth-watering grouper to flounder or tuna and everything in between, their subscription box brings the ocean's bounty straight to your Gamecock kitchen. What sets the Carolina Fish Market apart is their commitment to quality and sustainability. They work closely with local fishermen and women who use responsible fishing practices, ensuring that every bite you take supports both your taste buds and our precious marine ecosystems. They've even won Best Seafood 5 out of the last 8 years. But that's not all. They're offering free shipping to all TSUS listeners on every Carolina Seafood subscription box, making it even easier for you to indulge in the flavors of the coast. Experience the convenience and joy of having fresh seafood delivered right to your door without any of the hassle. Don't miss on this incredible opportunity to elevate your culinary adventures with the Carolina Fish Market's Carolina Seafood Subscription Box. Join the seafood enthusiasts across the nation who are savoring the taste of the Carolinas, one delectable bite at a time, and just in time for Father's Day. Visit their website today at carolinafishmarket.com. That's carolinafishmarket.com, and embark on a seafood journey like no other. Freshness, flavor, and convenience await you. Order your Carolina Seafood Subscription Box now and use the promo code SPURSUP, that's SPURSUP, for $10 off your first purchase. Again, that's promo code SPURSUP, SPURSUP, for $10 off your first purchase. The Carolina Fish Market, where taste meets the ocean.
Muscle Dougie, ho.
All right, guys, are back here on this Friday, June the 23rd, 2023. Again, appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in here on this Friday. Again, thank y'all so much for the love and the support that we felt all week long. And again, thank you so much to my guy Sean from Horn Takes Podcast for taking the time to chat with us, all things Texas football. Guys, with that being said, the top 5 series concludes today. And as we've mentioned before, specialists are people too, and that includes kickers and punters today. We're talking the top 5 best kickers in Gamecocks football history, and we start with number 5. This man kicked for the Gamecocks from 2007 to 2010. During his career, he handled both kicking and punting duties, booting 171 punts for a 42.6-yard average. He also went 80 of 84 in extra points and 34 of 44 in field goals, a 77.3% make percentage. Coming in at number 5 on our list, Spencer Lanning. And you think about those early Steve Spurrier teams, right? Special teams not necessarily, I'm not going to call it the strong suit, if you will, but this does include Shane Beamer came to South Carolina, right? What was it, 2007, I believe he came to Columbia. So Spencer Lanning, one of Shane Beamer's very own, was very good for the Gamecocks in 08, 9, and 10. And guys, he makes this top 5 not only because he was a quality kicker for South Carolina, 17 for 20 in 2009, 17 for 24 in 2010. But again, he also handled the punting duties, 42.1 yard average in 08, 41.9 yard average in 09, and a 44.1 yard average in 2010. And anytime you're handling both, that stands out among the rest. And for those reasons and more, he is number 5 on our list. Coming in at number 4, this man kicked and punted for South Carolina from 2005 to 2008. During his career, he booted 85 punts with a 42.3 yard average. He made 104 of 106 extra points and 49 of 69 field goals, a 71% make rate. He also ranks 4th on the all-time points scored list with 251. Coming in at number 4 on our list, Ryan Suckup, and one of the biggest legs in school history. Guys, you think about the bombs he would hit for Carolina. 55, 56. I believe his career long was let me see if I can remember it correctly, I think 57-yarder. I think it was 57-yarder at Vanderbilt he had one year. Either way, one of the best legs in school history. The one knock on Ryan Suckup, maybe not the most clutch, but again, I really feel like we're nitpicking when we say that. I really feel like we're nitpicking when we say that. I mean, you look at his career, guys, was Mr. Automatic, it felt like, for South Carolina, 16 of 20 in 06, 13 of 17 in 07. Guys, he went 20 of 30 in 2008. South Carolina kicked a lot of field goals in that season. But again, one of the best to do in school history. I'd say arguably the strongest leg in school history, and he ranks 4th on our list. Coming in at number 3 on our list, this man kicked for the Gamecocks from 1987 to 1990. During his career, he made 114 of 115 extra points. He missed just one extra point his entire career, went 72 of 98 in field goals, a 73.5 make percentage, and 330 total points, which ranks him 3rd on the all-time list at South Carolina. At number 3 on our list, Colin Mackey. And guys, your top 3 in points scored, you're one of the best to ever do it. And also, it's crazy. The man did not miss an extra point until his senior season. He went 28 of 29 and was also just Mr. Consistent. I mean, 25 of 32 on field goals in 87, 19 of 25 in 88, 12 of 19 was his worst season in 89, but he bounced back 16 of 22 in 1990. You think about the late 80s, Todd Ellis, Sterling Sharp, Ryan Bethea, all those guys, but Colin Mackey was a big part of those teams, and he ranks number 3 on our list. Now, this is where it gets interesting. At number 2 on our list, he played for the Gamecocks from 2017 to 2021. During his career, he made 152 of 154 extra points. He went 72 for 99 on field goals, a 72.7 make percentage, and 368 career points scored, which is the all-time school record for points scored. Coming in at number 2 on our list, Parker White. And you look at his career, guys, what's so interesting, I'll never forget one of the coldest takes I've ever had in the history of TSUS, and it's probably not one that's very publicized because, again, this was going in the 2018 season. I mean, TSUS, I think we had just hit like 1,000 followers, right? Very, very small entity still at that time. And, of course, you talk special teams. I mean, now it moves the needle more than it did because Beamer ball. But, a rough year for Parker White in his first year, right? Went 26 of 26 on point after attempts, but 14 of 25 in field goals, right? He started like 0 for 3, and I think his first make of his career was the game winner against Louisiana Tech in 2017, right? He also had the big game-winning field goal in 2018 against Missouri in the rain game, and he had some other big kicks throughout his career as well. But going into the 2018 season, guys, I actually predicted that Parker White would lose his starting job. I did not think Parker White would keep the starting job. Not only did he keep the starting job, he went on to set the all-time points record. So one of the coldest takes I've ever had, 14 of 25 in his first year, but he bounced back in a big way, 13 of 16 in 2018, 18 of 22 in 2019, 11 of 19 in 2020. It's a little bit rough there, only a 58% make percentage. But in 2021, he was fantastic. 16 of 17 for field goals and 30 for 30 in extra points, guys. And again, he set that all-time points record in the win against UNC in the Duke's Mayo Bowl. And he ranks number 2 on our list. And coming in at number 1, this man kicked for the Gamecocks from 2013 to 2016. During his career, he made 161 of 162 extra points and went 66 for 88 on field goals, a 75% make percentage. His 359 points rank second on the all-time list. Coming in at number 1, Elliott Fry. And the reason I have Elliott Fry in the number 1 slot versus Parker White, the reason is this. It took Parker White 5 years to do what Elliott Fry did in 4 years. It's really that simple, guys. Elliott Fry was the definition of consistent, man. 15 of 18 his first season, 18 of 25 in 2014, 20 of 28 in 2015, and 13 of 17 in 2016. So he didn't really have that huge breakout year. I'd say outside of his first year, we went 15 to 18, but he floated around 70 to 75% every single season, which is really good from your kicker. I mean, I think most will take that. You're going to miss a few here and there. 75% is a really good clip. But again, able to do it in 4 years. Also had some big kicks, right? He also had some big kicks. You think back 2016 against Vanderbilt in that season opener and all throughout his career as well. But again, a fantastic career for Elliott Fry. But the biggest difference for me and why he ranks number 1 versus Parker White, he did it in 4 years. Parker White needed that extra 5th year, that COVID year, if you will, to set the record. But again, both great kickers. So again, guys, my top 5 best kickers in Gamecocks football history. Number 5, Spencer Lanning. Number 4, Ryan Suckup. Number 3, Colin Mackey. Number 2, Parker White. And number 1, Elliott fry. Guys, we are going to jump into a quick break, but on the side, I want to talk a little bit about Gigi Jackson being selected. I wasn't sure whether I'd talk about this or not. I want to expand on my thoughts on Gigi Jackson being selected 45th overall, aka in the second round, what it means for him, what it means for Gamecocks basketball moving forward, and then we'll dive right into our conversation with Mark Ryan of the Fan Upstate. That'll come up at 1:15. Guys, all that and more on the side. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow. Attention all Gamecocks seafood lovers. Are you tired of searching for the freshest seafood in town? Look no further than the Carolina Fish Market, your go-to destination for the finest and most flavorful seafood in the Carolinas and beyond. Introducing the new Carolina Seafood Subscription Box, a culinary delight delivered right to your doorstep. Each month, you'll receive a carefully curated selection of fresh local seafood sourced directly from the waters of the Carolinas and beyond. From succulent shrimp to mouth-watering grouper to flounder or tuna and everything in between, their subscription box brings the ocean's bounty straight to your Gamecock kitchen. What sets the Carolina Fish Market apart is their commitment to quality and sustainability. They work closely with local fishermen and women who use responsible fishing practices, ensuring that every bite you take supports both your taste buds and our precious marine ecosystems. They've even won Best Seafood 5 out of the last 8 years. But that's not all. They're offering free shipping to all TSUS listeners on every Carolina Seafood subscription box, making it even easier for you to indulge in the flavors of the coast. Experience the convenience and joy of having fresh seafood delivered right to your door without any of the hassle. Don't miss on this incredible opportunity to elevate your culinary adventures with the Carolina Fish Market's Carolina Seafood Subscription Box. Join the seafood enthusiasts across the nation who are savoring the taste of the Carolinas, one delectable bite at a time, and just in time for Father's Day. Visit their website today at carolinafishmarket.com. That's carolinafishmarket.com, and embark on a seafood journey like no other. Freshness, flavor, and convenience await you. Order your Carolina Seafood Subscription Box now and use the promo code SPURSUP, that's SPURSUP, for $10 off your first purchase. Again, that's promo code SPURSUP, SPURSUP, for $10 off your first purchase. The Carolina Fish Market, where taste meets the ocean.
Muscle Dougie, ho.
All right, guys, we're back here on this Friday, June the 23rd, 2023. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. We're going to go and dive into this, guys. And, of course, we got Mark Ryan upcoming in 15 minutes. Like I said, I want to talk. I went back and forth and wasn't sure if I was going to discuss anything related to G.G. Jackson being drafted last night and give any thoughts or what have you. So I'll give my thoughts on that. We'll roll straight into the conversation with Mark Ryan. That means no break, Brendan M. Don't worry. There's not another break coming. Hey, somebody's got to keep the lights on. So if you'd like it to be you, we can cut out all the ads. I'm going to just be sending you an invoice here shortly. Either way, I want to talk about this G.G. Jackson thing. You know, guys, there are many times that I put out a tweet or a take, a post, what have you on social media, and I know that it's a divisive topic. It's somewhat of maybe a divisive take or, you know, a highly debated take, if you will. And I know I can see it coming, right? Hey, this is going to move the needle. This is going to get people going. There's going to be a lot of banter, which the beauty, of course, is in the banter. But I'm always able to see that coming, right? And then there are other times where I will give a take and it doesn't even move the needle for me because it feels like it's such a no-brainer take. But the beauty in the banter and the beauty of social media is this. Sometimes things surprise you. Sometimes you get surprised. And that was the case last night. Because G.G. Jackson, a guy who was once thought, I think, to be like a top 10 pick, if you will, in the NBA draft, slipped last night to the 45th overall pick to the Memphis Grizzlies. And let's first start with a positive, right? This is a positive for South Carolina basketball. The first underclassman drafted in school history. That's a positive. That's something you can sell in recruiting, right? You took G.G. Jackson, a great talent. Lamont Paris, I thought, by the way, did a great job of handling him and coaching him throughout the season, right? A young guy that obviously lacked some maturity. I thought Lamont did a great job of sending a message to G.G. Jackson. I thought he handled G.G. as best as he possibly could. Okay? So I thought Lamont did a great job of handling the kid and getting him to the point where, hey, he got drafted. He's on to the next level, and it's going to be fascinating to follow his career. But I said this last night, and by the way, guys, I'm not the only one, but I said no GG in the first round is an absolutely brutal look for Lamont Paris and Gamecocks basketball. I then followed it up this morning with this post, just expanding on those comments, saying GG falling in the NBA draft doesn't make Lamont Paris a bad coach or mean he's not the right guy for the job. But how can anyone say it doesn't make his job much, much harder on the recruiting trail? Fairly or unfairly, it feels like that'll be used against USC in the future. So I think some people may have misunderstood my tweet late last night when I said it's a brutal look for Lamont Paris and Gamecocks basketball. I'm not saying it's a brutal look for Lamont Paris because he did a bad job coaching G.G. Jackson or that he did a bad job in development. Quite the contrary. I think Lamont Paris did as well as you could have asked for, as I mentioned previously. In regards to taking a young kid with extreme talent, you were putting a lot of responsibility on him as a true freshman and managing his ego, managing his personality. I don't think Lamont Paris could have done any better than he did. But as I mentioned before, like you put out, sometimes you have takes that are divisive, that are controversial, whatever. And then sometimes you have takes that you feel like are no-brainers. So I'm struggling a bit to understand how this take is anything other than a no-brainer take. Guys, G.G. Jackson, again, was once thought of as a top 10 pick, a no-brainer first rounder. He slipped all the way out of the first round and into the second round, the 45th overall pick, which in the NBA draft, that's a very big deal, right? Zero guaranteed money. His draft stock completely tumbled. And I'm not saying that was South Carolina's fault, but the fact of the matter is this. He played at South Carolina, guys. He played for the Gamecocks. And now here we are. I don't know how there's even an argument against the fact that it makes Lamont Paris's job tougher on the recruiting trail in regards to landing the next G.G. Jackson. South Carolina men's basketball has struggled so mightily in in-state recruiting. They've struggled so mightily at keeping these big-time in-state guys home, and not even guys like Gigi. Like, we're talking like the 4 stars. Like, they've struggled keeping basically anybody at home. Do you really not think, or do you really think this won't be used against the Gamecocks on the recruiting trail? And guys, I'm not trying to pile on Lamont Paris. As I said this morning, this saga with G.G. Jackson, it doesn't mean that Lamont Paris isn't the right guy for the job. It doesn't mean he's not going to have massive success at South Carolina. It doesn't mean any of the above. But in the short term, do you really believe that it won't be used against Carolina on the recruiting trail? I mean, it's already an uphill battle. We talk about the challenges for each of the programs, baseball, basketball, football, what have you, and what they face, the challenges they face. I could argue there's not a tougher job at the University of South Carolina than the men's basketball job. And it goes to recruiting, it goes to everything, but recruiting is a big part of it that makes this job really, really tough. And I think Lamont Paris, great coach. I'm excited for his tenure and to see what is in store. And I'm certainly glad that G.G. Jackson was a Gamecock. And guys, like I mentioned, I mean, there are positives, right? I mean, you reset the calendar in regards to, hey, previously it had been since 2017 since South Carolina had a player selected in the NBA drafts. And now you can say, hey, 2023, right? Just, after year one of Lamont Paris, the Gamecocks had someone taken in the NBA draft. I mean, that's an accomplishment, right? Check that off. Year one. It only took a year for Lamont Paris to produce an NBA draft pick. But G.G. Jackson falling as far as he did, and I understand it's on the kid. Lamont Paris did all he could. But it's so weird to me. The energy is so strange. Like, we want to hold coaches accountable for everything. And so now in this instance, we don't? I mean, there's only so much Lamont could have done with G.G. Jackson's lack of maturity. Hey, he didn't make G.G. press the live button on Instagram. He didn't make him do that. He didn't make him say the things that he said. And I honestly feel for Lamont Paris for that entire experience because I know that was a challenge. And as I mentioned the season, maybe it got glossed over, looked over because, hell, nobody gives a damn about men's basketball, unfortunately, it seems. But I said it late in the season that I applauded Lamont Paris for benching G.G. Jackson. I thought it was the right move. I thought it was a great move. I thought it showed a lot about Lamont Paris that he was willing to do that and say, no, this is my basketball team. This is my basketball program. We have a standard here, and I'm going to uphold you to that standard. But at the same time, I think we can all acknowledge it's not even a knock necessarily on Lamont, but how can you argue, like, is it a positive that G.G. Jackson's draft stock tumbled? Is it a positive for South Carolina that instead of going to a UNC, he went to South Carolina and this is what took place? How can you sell me on that it's a positive? You can't, guys. And it's okay. It's okay. It feels more so like, and from the energy I see on social media, because I'm seeing a lot of people saying, this is a terrible take. This is an awful take. What are you saying? How? This is such a bad take. This is an objectively terrible take. This is an idiotic take. But nobody's telling me how it is. If you're just a sensitive garnet and black glasses Gamecock fan, well, just say that. That's fine with me. I get it. I understand that energy. But how is it a bad take to say you a once thought of pick player? He almost didn't get drafted at all. G.G. Jackson, better known now as G League Jackson, because that's probably where he's headed. And I wish the kid nothing but the best because obviously, you know what, credit to G.G. Jackson. I think he's learned a lot from his time at South Carolina. It sounded like he was apologizing last night for the way he acted, whatever. I'm sure it taught him a lot. I'm sure he learned a lot of lessons. And it's really unfortunate that was held against him. It really is. But hey, welcome to the Wild Wild West. Welcome to professional sports where they're investing serious money in you and they're not going to make a bad investment. Anything and everything can be held against you when it comes to your draft stock and where they value you. But when you look back at the G.G. Jackson experience and what it means for South Carolina basketball, I don't hold it necessarily against, I don't think it means like, oh, I judge Lamont Paris as a coach. He's not a good coach, because I think he did all he could, guys. I really do. I think he did all he could, and I applaud him for sending a message during the regular season. But it's just going to make his job tougher. It really is, because I don't know, when you look back, certainly I'm not sitting here saying the G.G. Jackson experience was a failure by any means. I think that is far too strong. But as I sit here and I look back on the G.G. Jackson experience, I think it had many more ups and downs. It was much more of a roller coaster ride than any of us could have expected. And now I just wonder, when the next G.G. Jackson comes around, the next big in-state recruit, is Lamont Paris able to land them? Or will this experience, will it be held against him? Will it be held against Gamecocks basketball fairly or unfairly? Because as you and I both know, negative recruiting happens. If I'm UNC, if I'm Duke, if I'm Kansas, if I'm whoever, hey, if I'm Alabama, if I'm Tennessee, if I'm Ole Miss, all these teams who have been taking players out of the Carolinas, I'm saying, why would you go to South Carolina? Why would you go there? What do you think positive is going to happen out of going there? They have repeatedly shown they will fumble the bag time and time again. Why would you go to South Carolina? And that is something Lamont Paris will have to fight, fairly or unfairly. Now, in the long term, hey, even maybe 2-3 years from now, we may forget about all this. The fact of the matter is G.G. Jackson got drafted. That's really all that matters. That's really all that matters at the end of the day. But I don't know how anybody who has a sensible brain can sit here and say that it's a positive for Carolina basketball recruiting. Like, it's not. This G.G. Jackson experience, it's not a positive for South Carolina men's basketball that his draft stock, he tumbled all the way to late second round. It's not. It's not. And I don't know how that's even remotely a hot take. Does it mean that Lamont Paris is the wrong guy for the job or that he did a bad job coaching G.G. Jackson? That's not what it means. But it was a brutal look, and it is a brutal look for South Carolina on the recruiting trail. And I think that's where most people misunderstood the original intent of the tweet. And I'll be really curious and intrigued to see if Lamont Paris is able to overcome that in regards to recruiting and keeping top in-state talent home. Guys, we got Mark Ryan upcoming in 2 minutes. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Let's see. Chase Floyd just said, anyone need me to time them out for 5 minutes so you can calm down? Let me know. Let's see. Not big-headed GG, little-headed GG. Yeah, I mean, listen, and Lamont Paris couldn't make him come back for another season. Would another season have helped? I mean, we feel like it would have. I'm sure it would have. I'm sure it would have. Let's see. Memphis's GM, Zach Kleinman, says, quote, Gigi's going to have to put in the work to really achieve his potential, and we're going to give him the structure to do that. He's a very positive, very hardworking kid who has an opportunity to be a very impactful player at the NBA level, but he's got a lot of work ahead of him. That's fair. That's fair. That's very fair. I'm sure that Mark Ryan's going to have a take on this. I can't wait to hear it. Also, Matthew Fuller, the running back, was supposed to announce at 1 o'clock on Twitter. I completely blanked on that. But it does not look like he has yet. Not seeing anything from Matthew Fuller. Sports Talk was the one who mentioned that at 1:15, Matthew Fuller would go live. Also, guys, I will say this. Matthew Fuller got a really weird Twitter handle. I don't know what's up with the Twitter handle for Matthew Fuller. Anyways. Brandon Coon says Gamecocks haven't had a basketball player go first round since Ronaldo Baltman in 2006. Lynn Turner, Gigi was never going to come back for year two. His plan was to get in on the current collective bargaining agreement. I mean, very good point, Lynn. Very, very good point. I just would say this. The Gigi Jackson experience, it was a positive at South Carolina. It was for sure. I just don't know that it was as much a positive as we all thought and hoped and expected it would be. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. In the second round selection, it only further solidifies that. Bottom line, it only further solidifies that it wasn't quite the experience that maybe we all expected. All right, we got him in the studio here, guys. Really appreciate you guys tuning in. Thank you all so much for the continued love and support. He joins us normally every single Thursday, but appreciate him rolling with the punches. We call the audible here on the Daily Crow, and we bring in my good friend Mark Ryan of the Fan Upstate, who hosts Offsides. Mark Ryan. Mark, let me first start off by saying this, my friend. Congratulations on 1,000 shows for you. An incredible accomplishment. Well-deserved, my friend. How you doing?
Hey, Chris, you know what, buddy? They told us when we started, you might remember this, Chris, that we'll never last here. Remember that? They said, we'll never last here. You'll never make it. Your style doesn't work here. Well, Chris, we got show 1,001 today. So we must be doing something right, brother, right? How do the haters
I love that.
How do the haters like them apples? You know what I'm saying? So we got a little bit of this action, Chris, for the haters, right? We got a little bit of that. So we keep rocking on, my friend. We keep rocking on. No, thank you, man. It was an unbelievable honor. I always wanted that in my career, Chris. You know, like I moved around quite a bit. Happened to be in the crossfire of a couple things in my career, corporate transactions and mergers and whatnot. And so to be able to hit that, I remember having show 100 and thinking to myself, man, what are the odds that I'll get to 1,000? And I knew they weren't great because the average sports media job lasts 2.3 years, you know? So to get to 1,000, we've been here 4.6. Even if, Chris, it all ended tomorrow, they can't take that away from you. You know, we've had a lot of success here. You've had a lot of success. So the haters can stick it where the sun don't shine. You know?
How about them apples, he says. Mark, again, I appreciate you taking the time, my friend. Always a pleasure to chat with you. And like I said, well-deserved success on your end. Mark, let's start with the hot topic of conversation, the 2023 NBA draft. Gigi Jackson selected 45th overall. And as you know, Mark, I've got a way of just about moving the needle with Gamecock fans and, for lack of a better way of putting it, pissing off Gamecock fans. But I mentioned this earlier, Mark, and I'm sure you've experienced this as well. There are times where you have a take where you know it's a divisive topic and it's something that's going to be discussed, and you know there's going to be a lot of banter, conversation, back and forth, disagreement, if you will, which is why we say the beauty's in the banter, and we love that type of discussion. There are other times where I'm sure you have a take and you feel like it's just the no-brainer take. It just makes sense. Well, that's where I find myself. I gave a take last night that Gigi Jackson falling to 45th overall, second round, was a brutal look for Gamecocks basketball in Lamont Paris. And maybe I didn't do a good job of expanding on that because I didn't mean from the fact that I thought Lamont Paris did a good job in coaching him. I think he did a good job in managing his attitude. I think he did as good a job as you could ask for. But from the recruiting side, when you think about the hype Gigi Jackson came in with, he was thought of as a lottery pick. He falls all the way to 45th. When the next Gigi Jackson rolls around the state of South Carolina, fairly or unfairly, that's going to be used against them in recruiting. And so it's a tough look in that degree. Doesn't mean Lamont Paris isn't the right guy for the job. Doesn't mean he's not going to have a lot of success. But at least in the short term on the recruiting side, I think it's a bit of a tough look to see the way that Gigi Jackson's draft stock tumbled. What are your thoughts? Am I missing the mark? I'll ask you, Mark Ryan, turn it on you. Am I on sides or offsides with the Gigi Jackson take?
You know what, Chris, I'll tell you this, my friend. My buddy, Aaron Torres from Fox Sports, who's a national college basketball analyst, said to me in March, he said, it's a shame what has happened to Gigi Jackson at South Carolina. He said, had he just had he not reclassified, he would have been a top 5 pick next year. Now he's going to get lost. And I screenshotted that yesterday. And I said, Aaron, I said in March, I said, man, interesting take. Because at the time, he was telling me in March he's going to get lost. Remember in March, Chris, he was still a projected lottery pick, right? Mm-hmm. So he's going to get lost as a lottery pick. Lose me that way, please. You know what I mean? But in the end, he was exactly right. I do not blame Lamont Paris for this. Chris, you said it's going to be used against him in recruiting. Chris, previous tweets from you and I are used against us all the time. Look at us. We've never been bigger. We've never been better. You know what I'm saying? Things are used. Haters use everything against you that they possibly can. But the fact that G.G. Jackson chose South Carolina, I think the sad case of G.G. Jackson is a cautionary tale for any kid to surround yourself around the right people, because his whole modus operandi was get to the NBA, get to the NBA, get to the NBA. And in so doing, he got to the NBA, but way before he should have been, with a bunch of people in his ear telling him how great he is. And all of the rap sheet on G.G. Jackson, I mean, I've read about this. The effort stinks. The body language stinks, right? I feel bad for what South Carolina had to put up with this guy. You think there wasn't talking going on in the Gamecocks locker room, having to put up with that prima donna attitude, knowing that the only reason was that he was there was to get to the NBA faster, right? He wanted to go to North Carolina, committed to North Carolina. North Carolina couldn't take him once he reclassified. So I look at this, Chris. I don't hold it against Lamont Paris. You know, I think Lamont Paris was handled something that wasn't chicken salad and asked to make chicken salad out of it. And so here we are, Chris. You know, it's a guy that has a ton of ability. Like, all the raw tools are there, right? You've got all the raw ingredients to make a 5-star meal, but you have a chef who doesn't know how to cook. And that's the problem with G.G. Jackson right now. Raw athleticism, all of that stuff is there, but it looks like a little bit of a mess with Gigi. And boy, if he could rewind his life a couple of years and do some things differently, make some better decisions, grow up a little bit, have some different people around him, Chris, we might be talking about a totally different story. It's not to say that it can't work out for him, Chris, but it's obviously like he's going in the back door, not the front door, right?
Hmm. And yeah, I think that's a great point, Mark, that you make, is that, you know, it's not that the G.G. Jackson experience at South Carolina like wasn't a success and that they can't hang their hat on the fact that in year one of Lamont Paris, they sent a guy to the NBA draft. I mean, that's a net positive overall, no matter what the hype was, where he was projected to go. I just think the G.G. Jackson experience in Columbia had many, many more ups and downs than maybe we were all expecting. And at the end of the day, did it go the way, did it meet expectations? Did it go the way we were all hoping that it would? I don't know that I can sit here, Mark, and confidently say that the G.G. Jackson experience was maybe what I thought it was going to be. Fair, unfair, whatever, but I'm pulling for the kid. I hope the best. I mean, he's, like you mentioned, he's got all the talent, athleticism, ability in the world. If he can surround himself with the right people, there's no reason why he can't be a big-time NBA player. And he said it last night, Mark, that he's going to wear South Carolina on his back. So if in a couple of years you can tout, hey, G.G. Jackson's our guy, he's in the league, that's going to be a major win for Lamont Paris and company. So we'll see what happens.
Don't worry about what the haters or what the other teams are going to use against you in recruiting. Hey, he went there. Yeah, it was year one of a new coaching staff. You know, everyone knew G.G. Jackson was just buying time to get to the NBA. You know, how did anyone think that was going to work last year with South Carolina? You know, it's amazing that Lamont Paris kept the train on the tracks as much as he did, right? You had a bunch of guys scrapping and clawing to get a chance, and kind of a little bit of a prima donna 5-star player, acting like, hey, counting down the days until he can declare for the NBA draft. That is a disaster, Chris. That's a disaster. So I don't blame Lamont Paris for that. I think G.G. Jackson is a young kid that needs to grow up, needs to mature, needs to have someone giving him some real talk in his life. But he got that humble pie last night. He ate that humble pie. He ate that humble pie during the draft process when he got his ass kicked left and right? I don't think this is a bad reflection on South Carolina basketball. And I'd have done the same thing in taking Gigi Jackson on if I was Lamont Paris.
So, Mark, I want to move to this. I think what's so interesting about you specifically, there are just people out there and entities that move the needle for better or for worse, what have you. And I go back to a conversation that you and I had on Monday. And as you and I both know, this is a huge recruiting weekend for South Carolina. You've got guys like Daniel Hill on campus, Dylan Stewart on campus, Jonathan Paylor on campus, as well as all your current commits for 2024. And that is by design, right? To make Dylan Stewart, those guys feel comfortable. These are your future teammates, what have you. But you and I talked on Monday, Mark. And of course, as you do, you guys throw out podcast segments, and which I appreciate you doing, by the way, because I love the ability to share the content, share our segments together.
Thank you for doing so. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. So you guys share the tweet. Shane Beamer and South Carolina recruiting were on fire in April, but the Gamecocks haven't received a commitment from a blue chip recruit in almost 2 months. Is there a cause for concern, or are big things on the horizon? At the Spurs Up Show answers. And I'm sure you get a kick out of this too. What is so funny, the people that reply in outrage that for a fact did not tune into the segment. For a fact they didn't. Because if they did, because I'm like, all right, I'm ready for it. I'm bracing myself. Because if anybody comes at me, I'm going to know for a fact you didn't listen. Because what did I say on your show, Mark? I think South Carolina's fine. They got blue chip guys. It's recruiting goes in cycles, whatever, right? It goes in waves of when guys commit. South Carolina is in great position with a couple of these blue chip guys that are in the pipeline. So I was ready. But I don't really even know if I have a question for you, Mark, but I wanted to bring it to light because since Monday, dude, that tweet, I'm looking at it right now, 55.8 thousand views on that tweet, which it puts a smile on your face. You love it. That's the end goal, engagement, the beauties and the banter.
Right.
It's just wild to me how that tends to happen, it feels like, on a weekly basis for you and I. It's wild.
Chris, I got it. So I do have a comment on this. And then, Chris, I actually have some interesting content to share with you and your listeners today. Okay. So I don't, you run the interview, right? I appreciate that. But if you don't mind.
Open-ended conversation. Open-ended conversation. That's the beauty of it.
So it's amazing to me, Chris. It's like, I feel like people have forgotten how to read, honestly. So let's go through this. Let's go through this message one by one. Chris, I had an idiot that said on that he's standing outside of my house with a gun from that tweet. Can you believe that? Right? I had somebody say, I'm standing outside of your house with a gun.
Oh, I did. I actually did see that. Yeah.
And I had somebody say, you're terrible at your job. Mark hates South Carolina. Let's go through this tweet. Okay. Shane Beamer and South Carolina recruiting were on fire in April. That's a true statement, right? That's true.
That is a true statement.
But the Gamecocks haven't received a commitment from a blue chip recruit in almost 2 months. That is also a true statement, right?
It's factual,
okay?
Yes.
Okay. So is there a cause for concern, or are big things on the horizon? This is a question. This is not a statement. Half of the question presents, is this a cause for concern? Because the Gamecocks were at number 3 to number 5 in recruiting, and now they're back down to really where they were under Muschamp, right? Is that a cause for concern? Or is this huge recruiting weekend going to send them right back up above Clemson? You are asking a question. Chris, is it not fair to say that people have just forgotten how to read? You tell me, man, what am I missing here? How is that an offensive thing to be saying? You know what I mean? How is that something to jump all over? We ask a question, it's up to folks to answer. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You're waiting outside for me with a gun. You're terrible at your job. I'm busy doing a sexual favor for Dabo Sweeney. What? Chris, seriously, what people have forgotten how to read, man. I don't understand where the offensive statement is in that tweet. I don't get it.
Yeah, and I'll say you this: you don't go to Twitter or social media in general for critical thinking skills. I will say most of the time, especially Twitter. And also, I'll say I think there are some people, Mark, that they want to be outraged. I believe that. I think there's some people that it fuels them, it fires them up. They like being fired up in that way. And I've told you before, man, we could just do a whole show on social media and the dynamic of it. I've just fully embraced the madhouse of Twitter. I just fully expect, my expectations for Twitter are zero. So when you see some of the nonsense that goes throughout your timeline, I expect nothing less. I expect nothing less.
I want to share one more with you here, Chris. One more on the other side of the rivalry. Okay. So Jake Crane, did he come on today? Jake Crane?
So actually, he did not. He had some things busy with Crane and Company. We talked this morning and did a little bit of an Auburn preview, but did not come on the airwaves today.
Gotcha.
No.
So Jake Crane said yesterday, he said, people believing Southerners aren't smart is a Southerner's greatest weapon if you use it correctly, right? And I quote tweeted that, and I said, Dabo has done exactly that to perfection with the whole Roy bus and, oh, shucks, we're little old Clemson and, just acts like we're lucky to be here and then whoops your ass, right? Like Dabo's done that to perfection. I have a Clemson fan who responded to that tweet and said the following: Dabo believes in the Lord. So do I. Okay. Dabo believes in the Lord and would not bear false witness. He is the man he says he is. Are you calling Dabo stupid? That's what it looks like to me. So it's, Chris, it's like, it really, I wish you guys could just live in our mentions for a day and just see what the kind of things that Chris and I get, because like half of it is just pure and utter nonsense. Half of the people turn a compliment into hate, and the certain people, Chris, I've talked to you about the bottom 10% of Gamecock fans before. The bottom 10% of Gamecock fans take a perfectly neutral tweet about Shane Beamer that has positive, negative, right? And they make it, you suck at your job. I'm out of your house with a gun. Like, what? What? So anyway, man, you ready for this content? I got some content for you.
Yes.
Okay. So I want you to tell me how you splice this. Okay. I was reading, Chris, the most recent Blue Chip Ratio article from Bud Elliott. Okay. And I want you guys listening to tell me how you take this excerpt from the article. The days of discussing whether teams like South Carolina, Ole Miss, Michigan State, or TCU can make a jump into the upper tier of talent have been somewhat shelved. Those teams were winning a lot and scoring some wins against the college football Goliaths in the early and mid 2010s, which left us to wonder if they could turn wins into a few more elite recruits. But for a variety of reasons, it didn't happen. And further, not many schools have stepped up to take their places. It stands to reason that the very best of schools that are filling the bottom of their classes with elite players, schools like Georgia and Alabama, means the third tier schools are not able to get as many. I read that as he's saying South Carolina is third tier, because the very group of schools that he just listed included South Carolina, right? So we can deduce, right? Using our reading comprehension skills, that he is calling South Carolina a third tier school. What was interesting to me is he is saying, forget South Carolina ever winning a national championship. Same with Ole Miss, same with Michigan State, same with TCU. But I don't think Bud Elliott has done the research on Gamecock recruiting that I've done, Chris. So here I can tell you the following. The blue chip ratio for the Gamecocks, remember, you got to be 50. The blue chip ratio means that the only teams that ever win a national championship have at least 50% of their recruits as 4- and 5-star players over a 4-year cycle. Okay. So to win the national championship, you got to be at that number. It doesn't guarantee you're going to win, but if you're not at that number, it guarantees that you won't. It's a prerequisite to winning the national championship. Under Will Muschamp, the Gamecocks blue chip ratio was 24%. Under Shane Beamer, the Gamecocks blue chip ratio is 33%. And Chris, if you were to say, okay, Mark, take out 2020 and add 2024. So let's look at what it would be for next year. 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024. It would be 39%. If you add in that this year's class is 8 for 11 so far. Then if you look ahead a year from now, Chris, to 2025, when that really bad year 1 for Beamer, his first year, which you don't hold against him, he had no blue chips and 13 total commitments. When that drops off, then you're really talking. So I love that article, and I really am a fan of Bud Elliott, but I don't know that he's done the legwork on South Carolina recruiting that I just shared with you, because Will Muschamp was at 24%, Shane Beamer's at 33%, and if you factor in the 2024 class, he'd be at 39%. So who are we to say that South Carolina can't get to a 50% blue chip ratio? He's 8 for 11 this year. So it just, I was reading that excerpt. The days of discussing whether South Carolina can make a jump into the upper tier have been shelved. Stands to reason, blah, 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 that means the third tier schools are not able to get as many. Yeah. They're getting them. They're getting them. You just got to wait a couple of years for the bad classes to churn out and for the best classes to churn in. And I think it's going to be fascinating, man, to see Beamer try to get to that number, because it's like, Chris, he's recruiting like he's aware of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you mentioned that article. I think Bud Elliott was certainly lumping South Carolina into that group, like you mentioned, of the third tier programs. I mean, just use context clues and realize what he was saying. I want to just point this out real quick, Mark, because my guy Dalton Hines says in the comments, obviously, let's see. He says last year TCU made it the national title game with a blue chip ratio way below 50%. Dalton's not wrong, but they also got run off the field 65-7. So the point was, a team that has won the national title has never been below that 50%, which is what it's intriguing. Florida State is going to try to do just that. And I actually heard you guys talking to your show earlier this week about teams below 50% with elite quarterbacks, Florida State being one, Tennessee being another, Washington, I think you mentioned as well. So, no, I mean, it is, Mark, going to be really interesting. And I think not to turn this conversation to the Florida Gators, for example, but I almost look at college football coaching. Like, I almost think, especially early on, right? Like, as long as you're recruiting at a high level, like the first 4 or 5 years, you want to win games. We're talking about the importance of year 3. It's pivotal for sure. Like, you have to win on the field. But the goal in the first 5 years, Mark, in my opinion, is to build a roster, like to build a program. The way you build a championship program, that culture stuff's great. Love your brother's great. Above all else, that's great. But the way you build a culture is getting a lot of really, really good football players, building depth, and setting yourself up to win at a high level. Again, it's a chicken or the egg conversation. Which comes first, Mark? Do guys like Nicholas Harbor committing to your school come first? Or do you have to win some games, 8, 9, say whatever? Do you have to do that first to attract the big-time recruits? I think Shane Beamer and company have done a really good job the first 2 years. They've had that perfect balance where they're recruiting at a high level. You really think beating Tennessee and Clemson last year didn't help sway Nick Harbor's decision? I mean, he now looks at the program and says, they won 8 games in year 2. They're a program on the rise. I can go there and be sort of that missing piece and go win 8 again, go win 9. My sophomore year, my junior year, we're competing for the SEC title. Like, there's a balance there, but not to, again, turn the conversation on Florida. Like, I look at Billy Napier. He's recruiting his tail off. The question with him is, are they going to give him enough time to stack 3 or 4 of those classes and build an elite roster? Because obviously we know, Mark, you've talked about it before, the wins probably aren't going to come early on. So I think it's a balancing act. But to your point, I mean, I love how Bud Elliott has turned it into a thing, and we love statistics, right? We love stats that back up opinion or back up fact, whatever. But, I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer thing, right? The teams with the most good players win ball games. That's what it comes down to. You need more good ones than not good ones to win at a high level.
Well, 100%. And next in line, Chris, on that, and to your point, what comes first, the chicken or the egg, the culture of the players of the culture? I think the best coaches, and I think Beamer's doing this, Chris, do them simultaneously. You try to recruit, you see where you are at recruiting. Year 1, Beamer's like, crap, none of the 4 and 5 stars are taking calls from us. You change some things, you surprise some people, you overachieve with what you have, right? Because, Chris, ultimately, that's how any program becomes elite. At some point, they have to win with less talent. Beamer, in the first 2 years, we all agree, did the most he could have possibly done in year 1, did the most he could have possibly done in year 2, right? So he is overachieving with lesser talent. Now, where is he in the blue chip ratio relative to anyone else? There are 16 teams who made the cut this year, right? 17th was Tennessee at 46%. 18th was North Carolina at 41%. Okay. 19th is Florida State at 39%, and 20th is Washington at 35%. Guess who 21 is? Oh, the South Carolina Gamecocks, ahead of Utah, ahead of TCU, ahead of Wisconsin, ahead of Michigan State. Some of these teams have playoff berths, Chris, you know, and a playoff berth we've seen doesn't guarantee a national title, doesn't mean you can win a national title. But I would say that, anyone who doesn't think, South Carolina is on the come, is on the up, isn't paying attention to the numbers. From 24% to 33% to 39%. Florida State is not a national championship contender, Chris. I think they're the biggest paper champion in college football, if I'm honest with you. They could have a record of 10-2. And my hope is, Chris, that LSU wipes the floor with them in week 1. And then it's kind of like they're like Oregon all year long. Remember Oregon last year? They lose to Georgia 50-3. And everyone's like, well, Oregon's 8-1. And our memories, we remember the first and the last thing that you do, right? And all of us were just like, yeah, but nobody wants to see that again. Stop bumping them up the polls. Nobody wants to see that again. So my hope is that LSU does that to Florida State, kind of rendering them running through the ACC kind of meaningless, because that was a team, Chris, that was 5-3 last year in a very, very mediocre conference. They got Brian Kelly and LSU by a point in his first game with a new system and a new quarterback. The easiest spread to me to bet all summer. I guess I have my LSU colors on today. What am I doing? They might be playing Florida in a big game coming up here or something, man. I think that LSU minus 1.5 points is the easiest bet that I could make. Florida State, Chris, represents what Buddy Elliott says is the kind of team that's going to break the blue chip ratio at some point. A team maybe in the low 40s. They're at 39% that has a great quarterback. They've got Jordan Travis. I just think when you look at their line play, man, they're just not there. They're just not there yet. And so 10-2 with losses to LSU and Clemson doesn't impress me when you consider Florida is in shambles and needs to build itself up. And when you consider the other teams on their schedule. Now, one final point, Chris, the Gator fans better give Billy Napier a chance. This year, Chris, to me, is a wash. And next year is the most difficult schedule that anyone has ever seen. And that's not hyperbole, Chris. I had Brad Crawford tell me that yesterday. He said, this is the most difficult schedule that anyone has ever seen. So what I want to see, I asked my Florida friends that I went to college with, I said, if Napier goes 6-6 in year 1, 7-5 in year 2, and 8-4 in year 3, is that good? And they all said he'll be fired in year 3. Well, he can't be fired in year 3, Chris. You got to give him a chance to build it. You've had way too much turnover at head coach. It's been a turnstile, man. At head coach, you've got to give him 4 or 5 years to build his system and to see if he is the guy. And I think it would be a travesty, given how he is recruiting and given the culture that he's building, to not give him that time. This year is going to be ugly. The Gamecocks should put it on the Gators this year by 20. By 20. They should. Spencer Rattler against Graham Mertz. Home game for South Carolina coming off a bye. Are you kidding me, Chris? Anyway, sorry to ramble, brother.
No, I mean, I'll say this, Mark, on just on the Florida Gators and Billy Napier. And I know Gamecock fans and SEC fans that are not fans of Florida, they love to Sunbelt Billy, right, pick on Billy Napier. But let's not forget, Gamecock fans, I think at one point, at least a good number of them wanted Billy Napier as the head coach of South Carolina. And I think Billy Napier is a quality football coach. And I would say this, I think it'd be a massive mistake for Florida, especially when you look at what he's doing on the recruiting trail. I think it'd be a massive mistake for Florida to have that quick trigger. Because like you mentioned, Mark, my question would just be for Florida, where do you go? I mean, what do you do? Who do you hire? Who is there a miracle worker out there that you think would come in? And I mean, I think the biggest knock of Napier at this point is Graham Mertz is your quarterback. That stuns me. They didn't get anybody else. But I mean, I think it'd be, to your point, I'm not a believer unless you've got a guy like Brian Harsin or just a no-brainer, not a fit, like you have enough evidence to suggest it's better to pull the plug. I don't love this new age. Like, coaches should still, in my opinion, get 4 or 5 years at minimum to just figure it out, build the program. Because, hey, with a transfer portal, you can turn things around really, really quickly. But to build the depth up front that you need, it still takes 3 to 4 years, Mark, to get those guys in, get them experience, develop them, and have them ready to play at a high level. Because right now, Mark, I'm doing all these SEC team previews. You know what's a trend I'm noticing? The best teams that I'm talking about, guess what they all have? All 5 offensive linemen are back. 4 of 5 are back. They've got big, experienced, talented offensive lines. And you can't go build that out of the portal, man. You need time to recruit those guys and develop those guys, and those guys get in the weight room. Those guys don't play as true freshmen. Playing true freshmen up front is a surefire way to have a really bad season in the SEC. So I'm just not a believer, man, in the quick trigger. And, obviously I'm not a Gator fan by any means, but I think firing Billy Napier after year 2 would be a massive mistake on the part of Florida. But that's just me. So anyways, Mark, last thing before I get you out of here. Florida LSU in the College World Series National Championship. Mark, I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm going to ask you right now, and I know what your answer is going to be. It pains me to know what your answer is going to be. Gators and LSU play on the football field in a regular season game. You said a couple of weeks ago you would take a regular season football win over a national title over the same team. Do you stand by that today on the eve of game 1 of the College World Series final against LSU?
6 days a week and twice on Sunday. Okay.
Come on, Mark. Come on,
Chris,
Mark.
Chris,
the national championship.
This is what we do to pass the time until football. You realize that the baseball team is so good because of the football money, right? You realize the baseball team is so good. Look, Chris, here is my dilemma. I hate bandwagoners, Chris. I hate bandwagoners. This is the first time I've ever watched the college baseball postseason. I do not feel, and your listeners can tell me, and you can tell me whether I have a right to this or not, Chris. I do not feel like I have a right to claim this Florida National Championship that is about to happen because LSU's arms have pitched 23 more innings than the Gator arms have, okay? I don't feel like I've earned the right to claim this Florida National Championship. I don't feel because I am a bandwagon college baseball fan. So
the bandwagon college baseball hackers. There we go. Whoa. Whoops. Hold on. We lost you. We lost your audio, Mark. We lost you went out on it for a second. We lost your audio. Where is Mark Ryan's audio? Where in the world is Mark Ryan's audio? Hold on. Maybe let me do this really quickly. Hold on. Maybe it's on me. Have Mark Ryan. Why do I have no Mark Ryan? The college baseball, the college baseball bandwagoners, hackers, hacked Mark. I think true diehard Gator fans just hacked Mark Ryan. I think that's what just happened. I have no idea. I have no idea. What in the world just happened? Okay, I think Mark's going to try to jump back in here. Okay, here we go. All right, I got you down, Mark. Here we go. I think, you know what happened? I think the diehard Gator baseball fans that are tuned into this, I think they just hacked your stream. They're like, get this guy out of here, man.
Austin Gregory, this is the best audio Mark has had for a while. That cracks me up. By the way, I see my guy Spur Daddy in here. Love you, Spur Daddy. Great to see you in here, buddy. I do appreciate it. Spur Daddy's a P1 listener, man. We appreciate it a ton. So, Chris, my question is, am I allowed to claim the Florida Baseball National Championship when I haven't been a baseball fan until now? And because I hate bandwagon fans, my feeling is that I shouldn't get to claim the national championship. I'll be happy if they win, but I've got to, I've got to preach what I'm saying, Chris. I got to reap what I sow. I can't lament all these bandwagon fans and then act like, hey, man, I've been there since day one. You know what I mean? When they win this thing, and they are going to win this thing. So, Chris, I'm announcing to you and your audience right now, and you guys tell me if I'm wrong. I think there's some people in this chat that would claim the national championship, even if they never were college baseball fans before. I don't think I have a right to claim this national championship. I don't.
Well, I know you're a big fan card guy, Mark, so I really respect where you're coming from. I mean, I look at it this way. I don't know. I mean, you went to Florida. I mean, we talked baseball all season. So, like, I know you didn't keep up with it game by game. I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. You feel like you're bandwagoning it, but I don't care if you want to claim it. You are a Gator, Mark Ryan. You are a Gator. That's the way I look at it. So
there you go.
Either way, it should be. I'll tell you this. It should be a great series, and I've been called, believe it or not, a Gator fan because of this, because Florida was my pick going into the College World Series. Florida was an Omaha pick for me at the jump. I'd have to look back. I don't think I had Florida winning it all when the tournament started, but when Omaha started, I had Florida winning it all. I felt like their path to get there was the most manageable. And I think what's going to make this series great, Florida's got the advantage on the mound. Their pitching depth's incredible. I think LSU's got the slightly better lineup. But I tell you, great pitching beats great hitting. I'd probably still take Florida to win this series. I think it goes 3 games, though. But, anyways, Gators are my pick. But I will not give you grief, Mark, if you want to claim it. I won't give you any grief. So you got my blessing. Either way.
Mark, Chris, Ryan, back to your question of, would you take a regular season win over LSU or the College Baseball World Series? Let me just bring you into my head and my world, Chris, okay? If Florida wins the Baseball National Championship, I'm slightly more happy than normal for a few days. If Florida beats LSU in football, I have that over people that I talk to for a whole year, okay? For a whole year. I have a little extra pep in my step talking to you guys because of 34-6 in November, okay? So you have that over a whole year. Of course, I'd rather have the football, than anything baseball can give me. But I don't expect a college baseball guy to understand that,
Well, and I will say this, though, Mark, in closing. The LSU win in football could be the one that turns the tide in the Billy Napier tenure. It very well could be the one. So it'd be a big deal, no doubt. Mark Ryan of the Fan Upstate, Offsides, Mark Ryan. Mark, keep up the great work, my friend. I appreciate you taking the time. We'll talk next week.
We appreciate you guys. Live today, 3 to 7 p.m. Offsides on the Fan Upstate. Download the Odyssey app if you want to check it out. That's AUDACY. Just search the Fan Upstate. You'll find us right there. Top-rated show in the Upstates. Let's make it happen. Well, thanks, Chris.
Mark, I appreciate you, man. Take care. Great stuff from Mark Ryan. Guys, the big news during that, Matthew Fuller, the 3-star running back for the 2024 class, has officially committed to South Carolina. We'll talk about all that and more on the other side as we begin our Q&A Power Hour. I want to hear from you, your questions, comments, calls, and more on the side. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow.
That's your Dougie, ho. That's your Dougie, ho. Muscle Dougie, ho.
All right, guys, we're back here on this Friday, June the 23rd, 2023. An electric show today, and I appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. In case you missed it, just announced Matthew Fuller, 2024 three-star running back out of Jessup, Georgia, Wayne County High School, has committed to the Gamecocks, a .8800 on the 24/7 Sports Composite. The 54th ranked player in the state of Georgia, the 36th ranked running back, but a very highly rated three-star prospect out of the state of Georgia, 6 foot, 210 pounds. He chooses the Gamecocks over schools such as Georgia Tech, Appalachian State, Cincinnati, Coastal, Elon, Florida Atlantic, Georgia Southern, Georgia State, Iowa State, Liberty, Memphis, Miami, Ohio, Middle Tennessee, Minnesota, Troy, Tulane, UAB, UCF, USF, Wofford, Bowling Green, and Charleston Southern. Guys, unfortunately, we are not taking calls today because you can see, like I'm doing the replay thing. I am without the headphones today. So, no calls today. No calls today. Just your questions. And we'll be back Monday as normal taking the calls. Again, I do apologize. I see my guy Justin is calling in right now. Justin, whatever you got, save it for Monday, and I promise we will get to it. My other question, guys, is this as we begin our Q&A Power Hour. I want to hear from you. Your questions, your comments, everything in the YouTube chat. You can text the number 843-790-3377. What the hell is going on with John Edward in the chat? I'm seeing this John Edward back and forth during our conversation with Mark Ryan. What is happening? What is happening with John Edward in the chat? What is going on? Y'all let me know. Anyways, let's see. Let's get into your questions here. We'll go back to the top of the show. And guys, if you ever want your questions to stand out, you want me to get to your questions first, Super Chat. Super Chat's the best way. We'll get into those questions immediately via Super Chat. Austin Gregory said earlier, I'll take our top 5 kickers against anybody. Hey, they're really good ones. They're really good ones. Robbie Davis, what's going on, Robbie? Appreciate you tuning in. We'll look forward to talking to you on Monday, my guy. Horn Take says, thank you for letting us join the Daily Crow today. Hook 'em and SEC. Horn Takes. Awesome stuff. Y'all be sure to go subscribe to Horn Takes for all of your Texas Longhorns coverage for this season and beyond. Jeff Gullidge says, so far, all the vloggers from each school guest, not sure what to call them, they've been great. I'm looking forward to hearing from the other schools in the weeks to come. Yeah, Horn Takes all week next week. We'll have Auburn, Ole Miss, Alabama, and Oklahoma. Those are the last 4, because after that, Jeff, in the weeks to come, we'll get into our opponent preview series, and we'll have people on from each of those schools, including North Carolina, Furman, Jacksonville State, if I can find someone, which I should be able to, and Clemson. So that'll be an interesting day when we get the Clemson side of things on the show. But either way, going to be a lot of fun. Let's see. Driftwood, fish fry, indeed. Chase Floyd says, join the Big Cock Club. Yes, sir. Join the Big Cock Club. It's a blast. It's a blast. Let's continue with your questions. How about this? Austin Gregory with a bold take. He says the GG experiment in Columbia failed. Life moves on. Don't think it hurts the perception of the program. It's his own fault for not growing and maturing, not Lamont's. GG treated college basketball like a pit stop. Spur Daddy says GG should have come back for one more season. He could have had his stock up with a better season on and off the court. Austin says GG's goal was never to be a good college basketball player. His ego told him he was NBA bound no matter what his output, and it showed on the court, and his stock fell accordingly. Austin Gregory spitting fire flames today. Spur Daddy says he was out for number 1 from the get-go. You're right. He just went to Carolina because he had to get that 1 year of college ball in before he could go pro. It's a good point. I mean, you're not wrong. None of these comments are wrong, honestly. None of these comments are wrong. Bruin Nation says Laurent Paris did the best he could with that diva. It's just wild to me. Like, I never would have expected the feelings around the Gigi Jackson era and Gigi himself coming from Gamecock Nation. But I tell you, it's a mixed bag, man. I tell you that. It is very much so a mixed bag. You don't believe me? Go on social media for 2 seconds. So, let's see. Austin Gregory, being able to tell recruits you sent somebody to the NBA draft for your first year is a net positive, no matter if the hype was met. Fair enough. Yeah. Justin said, Chris, I'm digging the layout added to the show like ESPN for the SEC, but better. So like SEC Network, you mean? Appreciate the love. Ethan says, what a game between Skeens and Louder last night. Both pitchers dominated. Yeah, they did. They did. That was a lot of fun. Let's see. What did John? Let me go back. Let me see if I can find this. Just the John Edward back and forth in the chats. Listen, the chat giveth, the chat taketh. I don't control the chat, guys. So you enter the chat at your own risk. You enter the chat at your own risk. I'm just going to leave it at that. Let's see. Hudson says, between Gigi, Ja, and Zion, we got to do better as a whole state with our basketball players. Just saying, dude, yeah, you're right, bro. It's what a trifecta right now. What a trifecta. Spur Daddy says, I set John Edward off saying Mark Ryan doesn't hate Carolina. That's what set him off. I mean, I would say this, John Edward, I'm pretty sure you follow him on Twitter and you tune into his show. I don't. Mark Ryan does not hate South Carolina. I don't even know what would make you say that. I don't know, man. Austin Hicks says, C. Philly and JC need to start their own podcast. Their conversations flow good together. Will be a good SEC show. Austin says, not sure JC ever leaves Carolina coverage, all his connections. Well, Austin, I would say this, JC already does a show, the JC and Morgan podcast, the Mike Morgan, and they talk a lot more than just South Carolina. So JC is actually out there doing some other stuff. So, let's see. Austin Gregory says, South Carolina sent 5 players to the draft last night. That's honestly incredible for us as a state. No doubt. John Edwards says, I've actually stopped tuning into the Fan Upstate and don't follow him anymore. Okay, well, breaking news. I didn't know that. Yeah, Coxby won a super chat on YouTube is like giving a gift on YouTube. So you can donate $1 to, well, you can donate anything. It's a donation basically to Brendan's point, but you'll see a lot of other channels do it, right? They're like, hey, I mean, that's honestly, guys, that's what I'm going to do in the post game for all these games. I mean, if you want, there's going to be so many questions and comments and everything else when we do the post game call-in shows after football games. If you want your question read on the air, you want to 110% guarantee it, a super chat's the way to do it, or the Big Cock Club Discord. But I think even the Discord's going to be crazy, man. So that'll be the way to do it. But also, too, I mean, you don't have to do it. It's obviously just Cox by One. If you want to show love, give back, show support, what have you for the business, the content, the channel, whatever, you can do so via super chat. They also do super stickers. So anyways, Brendan says, also, I'm ready for the TSUS Shadow of Death Valley collab. My God, Brendan, I will quit before that happens. I will literally quit. There are other Clemson guys, specifically Nachos and Analysis, that I had on during the baseball season, and I jumped on his show during the baseball season, if you will. There are other guys and he's probably the one I'll go with. I mean, he's really, and I met Nachos in Analysis in person. Really cool dude. He's a really, really cool dude. So we'll probably go with him. We might go with somebody else. I have no idea. I mean, there's not many, but there are some other Clemson content creators out there. Anyways, though. So let's see. I literally just got an email from NCAA Men's College World Series. Tickets at mail2.ncaa.com for tickets on sale to the College World Series. How about that? Austin Gregory, you have to build a South Carolina football program from scratch. Who's the one player or coach you would draft with your first pick? The player or coach that I would draft with my first pick. Well, I'm probably drafting a coach, Austin Gregory. I know the popular pick would say, I'd draft Shane Beamer. But realistically, if I'm drafting a coach, guys, I'm probably drafting Steve Spurrier again. I just one of the greats to ever do it. Although, you know what, actually, pivot. In this day and age of college football, where you have to recruit 24/7, 365. I don't know that Steve Spurrier is a good answer. I don't know that he is because that's what's required now. You know, back when Steve Spurrier in his heyday in the 90s, guys, you coached for 3 months, you recruited for 3 months, and you played golf for the other 6 months. That's it. Now it is a nonstop 24/7, 365 where you have NIL, you have portal, you have to recruit high school prospects, you have to recruit the portal, and you got to recruit your own roster, guys. Think about that. You have to recruit your own roster to not leave. I don't think Steve Spurrier would want any part of that. So to answer your question, you have to build a South Carolina football program from scratch. Who's the one player or coach you would draft with your first pick? I guess I'm drafting Shane Beamer, man. I said I wasn't going to give you the typical answer, but I don't think there is a better fit for South Carolina to go into or be in this era of college football than Shane Beamer. I really don't. Now, I'm going to cheat. If I can pick two coaches, I'm picking Steve Spurrier as my head coach and Shane Beamer as my recruiting coordinator. How about that? That's what I'm going with. But I have to pick one. Shane Beamer. Brennan M., I'm not forgetting about the Big Cock Club Discord at all. Will Hall is just bumping. We hired a new track and field coach in case you missed it. No, I saw it. Will Hall. I saw it. Not really familiar with the guy. Tim Hall is his name. Is he related to you, Will? I'm not really familiar with him. He spent time at Clemson, spent time at Tennessee. Kentucky's where he comes from. So sounds like a good pickup. I mean, I admittedly, again, don't know a whole lot about track coaches, but sounds like a good pickup. So the big question is, does Nicholas Harbor like him? I would imagine they hired someone that Nicholas Harbor was a fan of. Austin Gregory says, favorite season of Gamecocks football ever. That's a tough one. Austin, because, I have my pre-business days as a fan and my post, like my TSUS era as a fan. I also have my childhood. I also have, there's just different eras of my fandom of South Carolina, right? I have different eras of my Carolina fandom. Favorite season. That is a really good one. It's hard for me, Austin, to top 2013. It's hard for me to top that. First season ever having season tickets. And, I mean, that season was just, you win every single home game. That season as a whole was just incredible. I mean, it really was. I'll tell you, man, the 2005 season, I'll never forget watching those games with my grandfather. We would watch the games in the garage, actually. Had a TV set up in there, couch, all that good stuff, had AC. But I'll never forget, guys, the 05 Carolina-Tennessee game in Knoxville. Gamecocks going for their first ever win there against Philip Fulmer. Peyton Manning got his jersey, I think, retired that night, if I understand correctly. He was honored that night for sure. Either way, though, I'll never forget when South Carolina, Josh Brown lines up for that field goal, and my grandfather and I cut the TV off. We were so nervous. We were listening on radio because what we used to do, we used to watch the game on television and cut the radio on. And somehow, I don't know how, but it synced up at that point. I don't know how it did it, but it did sync up with the TV. And I will just never forget. Dude, that's a funny side note. I used to get irritated with my grandfather. Not with my grandfather. I used to get irritated because the radio would be ahead of TV. And I'm like, Papa, like it's ahead of the TV. Like, cut the radio off. My grandfather loved listening to Todd Ellis. He loved listening to the radio broadcast. Sometimes it was lined up, though, which was incredible. It's great having the radio on and listening to them versus the play-by-play guys on ESPN. Either way, we cut the TV off and listen to Todd Ellis call the field goal because we were just so nervous. Like, I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it. So that season, man, I went to the season opener against UCF in 2005, first game. I'll never forget that first game. A fan behind me, Carolina, Blake Mitchell to Whiteside on the opening possession. And a fan behind us says, "It's no more run and run, baby. It's cock and fire." Like that was so cool. Beating Tennessee, beating Florida, man. I mean, that was an incredible year. That was an incredible year, man. That was an incredible year. 2013 for me, though, again, guys, stands out. I had season tickets, was at every home game, was at the Clemson game where Carolina won their 5th in a row. I thought Carolina was never going to lose to Clemson again. Ironically enough, they didn't win until this past year. I'd say that this past season, guys, I mean, from the business side, right, because this past football season, we achieved just unprecedented heights, man. Unprecedented heights. I mean, you guys know. I mean, seeing a football season, watching games and going to games and seeing the merchandise on the Jumbotron, seeing the towels on ESPN, seeing people around game day rocking the merchandise left and right. Like, it's still surreal. It really is. I mean, it's surreal, man. It's incredible. And the season itself was a blast, obviously, guys. Like, I love creating content. I love talking football. I love talking Gamecocks football, of course. This past season was just a blessing, man. And I remember saying it last year that there's when you first start on a journey, there are goals you can set out and you can dream up wild things about what you want to accomplish, what you want to do. But I think the beautiful thing about a journey and the reason the joy is truly in the journey is because when you put that consistent work in, that consistent grind, you keep your head down, you work, and you strive for those goals, but you trust the process. You put processes in place to be successful and to get to where you want to be. There are blessings and there are things that happen along the journey that you could just never imagine, that you could never envision, that you could never dream. And that is so much fun. That is such a blessing. It's incredible. I mean, it's just beyond words, man. So last football season for me, because of that, definitely one of my favorite football seasons all time as a Gamecock fan. Guys, that being said, let's jump into a quick break. On the other side, I want to continue to hear from you, and we keep the conversation rolling here on this Friday. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow.
Muscle Dougie, ho. Muscle Dougie, ho.
All right, guys, we're back here on this Friday, June the 23rd, 2023. Ruination asks, Chris, no Carolina Fish House ads? Well, the reason is, Ruination, that ad specifically is for a Father's Day ad read. So we got to get that updated. So we'll be getting that revamped and relaunching that here soon. And yes, Brennan M., the slapdick, our resident slapdick, Brennan M. says, the graphic still says 12-2. I know that, Brendan. I understand that. The person who made me the video does not, we don't talk anymore. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know how to change that. So might just have to deal with it saying 12-2. I don't know. We'll figure it out over the weekend. Either way, guys, really excited because next week we'll dive into these SEC team previews. We'll continue doing them. Let me ask you this question. Would I be a slapdick for taking next Friday off, making the long weekend even longer? Would I be a slapdick for that? I know what Brendan M's going to say. Brendan M's going to say absolutely. I'm not telling you I'm going to do that because I'm not telling you I'm going to do that. I'm just thinking to myself because we've got team previews Monday through Thursday. Friday, we don't have that. So, Justin Martin, I see you, Justin. Hey, we're not taking calls today, Justin. We're not taking calls today because my headphones are broken. Homie Lamont says you already are a slapdick. Indeed. I hear you. Cox by one says I can help. Okay, we might have someone help us fix that graphic. All I need changed on it is the 2 to a 3. That's all I need. Either way. Brian Dean, I'm not saying I'm taking that Friday off. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just asking a simple question. I just wanted to see what the response would be. So, anyways, guys, you can text the number 843-790-3377. We will get back to your calls on Monday, like I mentioned, guys. Believe it or not, this adorable little puppy in here chewed the cord up to the old headphones. So, anyways, Brian Dean, Chris, how do you feel about Fuller? I think it's a solid pickup. You talk to folks. The offer list is, it doesn't have Bama, Georgia, all those big schools on it. But I think, listen, this right here is the difference when you're talking about recruiting, what makes an elite recruiter truly an elite recruiter. If you can hit on a guy like this, 6 foot 210, you like the size. Again, he's a very highly rated 3-star, a guy that could jump up to be a 4-star. These are the type of guys. Let me put it this way. For Matthew Fuller, these are the type of guys that if you're South Carolina, you have to be able to identify and hit on. Because you're not going to go into Georgia's backyard and get the ones that they want. You might not even be able to go get the ones they don't want. But if you can go get a guy like a Fuller who's maybe slept on a little bit, diamond in the rough type of player. Again, you talk to folks, they're really, really high on this kid. But this is the difference, right? Anybody can identify a 5-star, say he's a stud, he's going to be a stud at the next level. You look at a 4-star, hey, great, he's a 4-star. But can you look at a guy like this? Can Matthew Fuller, let's say, be the next Kevin Harris? Can you look at a guy like this, identify a good culture fit, identify a good fit for what you're doing schematically, and a guy that you see something in that you can develop and make him into a big-time player? That's the difference. That's what you have to do at South Carolina. You have to be strategic in recruiting while also getting as many blue chippers as you can, but you've got to be able to be strategic in recruiting, and I think Matthew Fuller at the running back position could be the latest in that, if you will. So, I mean, you look at a guy like Nicky Mawari, for example. I mean, this is a kid a couple of years ago. I talked to Eric Kimmery. They said, yeah, we got this guy from Irmo. We're really high on. I don't know how nobody's looking at him. What's going on? And now look at Nicky Mawari, right? So the identifying talent, That's the separator between a good recruiter and a great recruiter, and we'll see if Fuller can be that guy. So, anyways, let's see. Continuing through your questions, Billy Amick. Sounds like Billy Amick could be a Gamecock, the Clemson transfer. Austin Gregory says Amick's the spark we need out of the portal. A lot of misses, it feels. Would be great to hit on a guy like that. Also, always fun to take away from the upstate. Yeah, be huge. That'd be a huge pickup if you can get Billy Amick. Let's see. Justin says, Chris, South Carolina doesn't have a lot of history in the NBA first. Congrats to G.G. Jackson. Congrats to G.G. Jackson, indeed. Congrats to G.G. Jackson. Ruben Nation, here's a little info. Hardesty, recruiter for Fuller, the 3-star. Jody Wright's the recruiter for Daniel Hill, the 4-star running back from Mississippi. Okay. Austin Hicks says, can we see the puppy, Chris? The puppy is sleeping. You've seen the puppy, the rally puppy. You've seen the rally puppy, my friend. Same rally puppy. Same rally puppy. Again, guys, your questions, your comments. Jake Crane helped us out this morning with our Auburn team preview. That will air next week. Of course, no Jake Crane on the show today, though, because he's busy with some things with Crane and Company. We'll get him back on next week. I mean, again, guys, you know, I'm really, honestly, guys, I'll tell you this, and I think I said this. You know what's funny? I think I said this time last year or just a couple of months ago, like in the football season, but I'm going to echo it. And that's the beautiful part. I keep saying this over and over, but like I've never felt more confident in what we're doing content-wise. I mean, I've just never felt more confident. Like what we're doing content-wise, the way we're producing content on a day-in, day-out basis, I mean, I am so thrilled about it. Yeah, I've never been more thrilled about the current structure of the content. So, but I'm really excited. Again, we've been able to be, the reason I say that, we've just been able to be consistent, right, through the dead of the off season, if you will, and keep the conversation rolling. And of course, next week, like I mentioned, peak off season, peak off season with no baseball going on for Carolina. Of course, the baseball season could be over Sunday night, right? Monday at the latest. So, we will continue to, keep the conversation rolling with these SEC team previews, but really excited to get to next weekend, July 4th weekend, as one of the puppies is stood up over here. You see the puppy? He stood up over here. Really excited, though, to get in the July 4th weekend, go through Monday, Tuesday. We'll have off. We won't do TDC, but Wednesday, we will return in a big, big, big way. Wednesday, July 5th. Mark it on your calendars. Game-by-game predictions part 1. And on July 6th, game-by-game predictions part 2. The reason I break it up into 2 parts, because if I didn't, right, those are long shows, right? If I didn't, it would take up the entire first hour. Right? So, I don't want to do that. It'll probably about 30, 35 minutes. We'll talk. The way we break it out, too, is going to change also. I'm probably going to spend an entire segment on just of the podcast, if you will, just talking about my key 3-game stretch. So it's going to be a lot of fun, man. Content overload as we get into the season, going to be a blast for sure. Brian Dean says, when is SEC Media Days? Brian, no, it's not the 27th. It's before that. It's the what is it? The 19th, I believe. Oh, the Rally Puppy getting after it. Rally Puppy is ready to play. Where is the Rally? Where are you at? Come. Hey, buddy. Yeah, they're antsy. They're ready to go. They're ready to go outside. The 17th to the 20th, and Shane Beamer will speak on the final day. The 3 coaches speaking that day, guys: Lane Kiffin, Josh Heupel, and Shane Beamer. What an electric day. This is how it breaks down. On Monday, you got Brian Kelly, Elijah Drinkowitz, Jimbo Fisher. On Tuesday, you got Hugh Freeze, Kirby Smart, Zach Arnett, and Clark Lee. On Wednesday, Nick Saban, Sam Pittman, Billy Napier, and Mark Stoops. And then Thursday, like we mentioned, Kiffin, Beamer, and Heupel will all take the podium. Also, I'm going to share this with you all. Because, let's see. Actually, let me see. Let's get into our Big Cock Club Discord. Dalton says, after the commits we have picked up from the portal already, what other holes do we need to fill in baseball? I think adding another power arm, Dalton, would be a positive. That's the big one that's the big one that I look at. Cox by One says, do you think you could have a game preview each week with someone that's a podcast, YouTuber, whoever we play that week, maybe Thursday or Friday? Cox by One, that's a great question. I think there'd be a lot of value in that, Cox by One. We might do that. That's a very good question, Cox by One. I think that is to get the, again, we're having the opponent previews, right, Cox by One. So we're going to late in the month of July, we're going to get the opposing perspective, if you will, right? But we could do it the week of. That'd be a lot of fun. Again, I'll tell you this, guys. The content this season, in all aspects, the Daily Crow, the podcast that drops after the fact, of course, the content this upcoming football season will be our best yet. And I love the fact that I'm saying that because I said that this time last year as well. The studio setup's going to be better than it's ever been. The way that we're producing content, specifically on the podcast side of things, going to be better than it's ever been because it's going to be the most consumable it's ever been. We keep getting the positive feedback from you guys on just the way that we're producing the content right now, right? It's going to be more consumable, much easier to digest. There's going to be more of it. So I can't wait, man. I really, truly, genuinely cannot wait for it. It's going to be a blast. I'm ecstatic, man. I'm truly ecstatic. So anyways, guys, keep the convo rolling. I'll just say this. I'm going to share this with you all. Again, I have no pride, no ego in this. As you all know, having credentials is something that is not necessary for TSUS, what I do for business. It's not. Hey, calm down. She's getting riled up. She's getting antsy. It's not necessary for business, right? And I say that because, we don't need to be at the press conference. We don't need to be, in the press box. That's just not really, that doesn't fit the mold of TSUS, right? We can watch everything. We can cover everything. I'm an opinion man. It doesn't matter. We watch all the pressers, whatever, right? And as you all know, there is a riff, call it for what it is. There's a riff between South Carolina, the university, and TSUS. Just call it for what it is, right? And it's not really a big deal. Maybe riff's too strong of a word, but USC has the power to give access to who they want, right? That's their prerogative. That's their right. So listen, if people like Steve Fink with the football program, Kent Reichert with the baseball program, if those folks if they feel like, we don't want to give TSUS access, then so be it. They don't have to. I don't need it. It's something that, I'm not in the traditional media box. And so therefore we don't get those media credentials, which again, guys, for people that aren't in this space, they think that's something that you need. And early on, I thought to myself that, getting credentials, that means you're legit. That legitimizes you. That, I need that validation. And as my career doing this and my lifespan as an entrepreneur, as it went on and on and on and everything grew and I became more confident in my abilities and what I was doing, I realized I don't need any external validation. I don't need anything to validate me to tell me we're doing great work, whether that be a pat on the back, that be a tweet, or that be credentials, right? So why am I bringing this up? I have no problem not receiving credentials to South Carolina events. Not a big deal. Does not bother me in the slightest. Guys, I'll be honest with you. I don't want to go to every press conference. I don't really want to go to every practice either. It's unnecessary. And I don't even live in Columbia anymore. However, there are SEC sanctioned events, whether that be the SEC baseball tournament, that be SEC media days, for example, that I'd be lying to you if I said that I wouldn't like to attend those. And the SEC baseball tournament, we can just go, right? You don't need credentials to do that. SEC Media Days is not like that. So I have reached out to Steve Fink and let him know, listen, let bygones be bygones, man. Put down the hatchet, bury whatever it is, whatever. I understand TSUS is on your blacklist. To insinuate there's not a blacklist is laugh out loud funny. However, I simply said, and I'm not going to read off the entire email, but I reached out to Steve Fink to say, hey, man, I just really want to go to SEC Media Days. That's it. That's it. Whatever blacklist there is for TSUS, just leave it alone, dude. Put down the freaking hatchet. Like, give it a rest. Also, in doing that, I reached out to the head of the SEC, whose contact information I was given. Reached out to the head of the SEC, explaining who I am, what TSUS is, what it is that I do, and why I feel that TSUS and myself more than deserving of credentials and the value that we can bring through content to not just the South Carolina aspect, but the entire SEC Media Days event. I sent that yesterday. We are awaiting response. So, again, you know what? It could blow up in my face, and it is what it is. If we don't go to SEC Media Days in person, I'll be sitting here covering it in the studio. We're going to have a great time talking about it, chatting about it, doing the live show, whatever it is. Does not matter. The content will roll on just the same. But I'll go ahead and throw it out there and speak it into existence. We are trying to get to SEC Media Days in Nashville. I'll never forget sitting back 2014, I think it was. The SEC Network debuted. They made SEC Media Days this huge deal, right? And I remember sitting there thinking to myself, how cool would it be to be there? How cool would it be to be at SEC Media Days? And again, that was way before TSUS was ever in existence. And so I'd be lying to you if I told you that I would not love to go. Because I would. It'd be awesome. It'd be an experience. I don't want to go again for the validation or say, look how cool I am. Look how big and bad TSUS is. Dude, I just want to go for the experience. I just think it'd be cool, man. A lot of people that I know that I've conversated with, that I've had on the show, they will be there in person as well. Would be a great opportunity to mingle with them, hang out. And guys, we could go live from SEC Media Days. How cool would it be? It would just be a great experience. I've also never been to Nashville. That'd be awesome. So we have taken the steps to reach out, say, hey, I'm going straight to the source, man. The head of the SEC. This is who I am. This is what I do. I feel that we are deserving. I feel that we are deserving of being there. And we'll see what happens, guys. We'll see what happens. I have no idea. It is what it is. I won't take it personally if we don't go. I won't take it personally if we get declined. It'll just be, it is what it is, man. What do I have to lose? I've been declined every single year. So it's all good. It's all good. We'll see what happens. I'll keep you guys updated, but hopefully in a couple of weeks, we are in Nashville. So, and again, Cox by one. It is one of those things. You're probably right. You're definitely right. We can just watch it on TV, smoke a cigar, hang out. You don't need to be there. Nobody needs to be there. It's not one of those things where I want to go on a yearly basis even. But I'd like to go once. I'd love to go once just to experience it. Just to it. Hell, I'll even do this. Steve Fink, you have my word. I won't even ask Shane Beamer a question. I won't even ask a question. You don't want me to interact with Shane Beamer? Fine. I just want to go to SEC Media Days. That's it. I just want to go. So we'll see what happens. Anyways, guys, we'll keep the convo rolling. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Band homie Brendan just says, oh, God, did you get credentials? Not yet, Brendan. Not yet. So let's see. I think there's a deadline. Let's see. When is the deadline? Let's see here. Friday, July 7th at 6 p.m. Eastern. That is the deadline for requesting credentials to SEC Media Days. So I am awaiting the response. Hell, I might even give the SEC Communications Office a call. I don't know. I feel like the fact that we have to jump through these hoops is crazy. I know it's a very, very highly attended event. I know it's very popular and there's only so many credentials to hand out in my opinion, there's no reason. I mean, TSUS is more than deserving. I don't give a damn what anybody on Twitter says, whatever. Guys, listen, I ain't worked for another human being in over 4 years. Like, I mean, dude, I don't need the validation of some slapdick on Twitter to tell me that TSUS is legit. I know it's legit. You see the work, the numbers, everything we're doing. It all speaks for itself. There's no reason that TSUS doesn't deserve to go. So I'll leave it with that. Anyways, guys, we can get back to more of your questions. Frank says 71 days. Just saying. Indeed, man. Just over 2 months. It's crazy. Just over 2 months. 71 days, man. And I don't know if you can tell, Frank, but I'm so excited to talk about it. Like, I feel like as we're getting closer to the beginning of July, we get closer to kickoff, we get closer to SEC Media Days, like, there's more energy in my voice. I feel like there's more energy. Like, I'm starting to get amped. I'm starting to get pumped, man. Panic Ritter says, in 71 days, Panic Ritter will start panicking. Panic Ritter, you say that as if you stopped panicking. You say that as if you stopped panicking. Anyways, guys, again, appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. This week has been a massive success. Have had a blast all week long. I also want to say thank you so much to all the guests who have come on. Great conversations as always. Yeah, really, really good stuff. I mean, it's a blessing. I mean, it's truly a blessing that I get to wake up and do this each and every single day, guys. Like, I look forward to doing it. I leap out of bed in the morning. I go to bed at night thinking about the content we're going to create the next day. Like, I look forward to it, man. I mean, I was thinking about this. I was thinking about this the other day, and people ask all the time, like, what's the best advice for, being an entrepreneur and how to get started and whatever. And, my first piece of advice is just start. But, my other biggest piece of advice is find what you love, find what your passion is, and become grossly obsessed with it. Now, there are other steps in that, right? For example, you got to find a way to monetize it, right? A business without making money is a hobby. But if you find your passion and you become grossly obsessed with it, in my opinion, guys, you can't lose. In my opinion, you cannot lose. And what's so funny to watch, what's so funny to witness, what happens to most people is they find something they like to do. They just like it, though. And you know how you can tell? You know how you can tell? And the reason I say find something you love, you're passionate about, become obsessed with it, because in the beginning, you're trying to make it a business, right? Well, you're starting from zero. You're starting from zero. You got to eat shit for quite a while. I'm talking a couple of years. And you know what? Maybe you're the rare instance where it pops off in 6 months. But you got to go into it with the mindset that you're okay with it taking a couple of years, that you do it just because you love to do it, right? You can't go into it because the second it gets hard, if you don't love it, you'll quit. And I've seen it happen time and time and time again. One of the greatest reasons, I think the reason TSUS has won, if I had to pick one thing that has made us win, it's the consistency. Without a doubt, it's the consistency. Because when you get consistent, you know what happens? It might take quite a while. But you know what happens? And you keep sharpening your content, evolving. What happens is this: you become the go-to source by default. You become the go-to entity by default because you're like, people might say, you know what? Maybe he doesn't have the greatest voice. Maybe he's not the best to look at. Maybe he's not the smartest. Maybe not all of his takes are spot on, but he's going to be there every single day. He's consistent. He or she, by the way, he's consistent though. Consistency is king in the content space. Consistency is king all throughout. Anybody can have one great day. Anybody can make one great show. Anybody can have one great workout. Anybody can hit one great shot, right? This applies to everything. It's about consistency. The consistent person is the one who wins. And you know what happens when you're consistent? You're really at that point able to develop your craft, learn about yourself, and make adjustments from there. So even if maybe the end result doesn't look the way maybe you thought it would in the beginning, because of your consistency and putting in the work and evolving as you go, you can't lose in that scenario. You cannot lose. Consistency above all else. Guys, we'll jump into one final break. On the other side, I want to continue to hear from you. More of your questions, comments, calls, and more. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow.
Muscle Dougie Ho. Muscle Dougie Ho.
All right, guys, we're back. Final 8 minutes or so here in the Daily Crow, taking your questions, your comments. I want to get to something really quickly that our friend Brendan M. I know I give him a hard time. I think Brendan's just having a tough time adjusting to the, Brendan fresh out of college, now in the work world. I get it. A little bit on edge. I understand. It'll get better, Brendan, I promise. No, anyways, he posts this tweet. I want to get to this. Our friend Jake Crane says, why does the College World Series not wait a week into the final series so we can see the best pitching matchups? We literally wait a full week every 2 rounds for March Madness and the college football playoff. It's a win for everybody. I think the reason you don't do that, and I saw our guy, what is his name? Outfield, left field, or whatever, on Twitter. Let me see. I just saw the tweet. Here we go. Occupy left field. Occupy left field. He made a great point of the problem is this. The fan bases are already out there, right? They've been out there for like a week or so. And so if you waited another week, you'd be asking them to leave Omaha and come back in a week. I think because of where it's played, I think that's what makes it tough. I think because of where it's played. Now, if you don't give a damn, you can say whatever. You know what I mean? You don't give a damn, just say whatever and make them come back. But I think that's the biggest reason why you don't see that delay, if you will. Anyways, guys, great stuff, Brendan. Thank you for bringing that tweet up. Jacob E. says, actually, let's get to Frank's question or comment. Where he says, first play, screen loss of 3. Second play, knocks over the middle, gain of 30. Third play, out route to Wells for a touchdown, 6-0 USC. Love that, Frank. We'll see if it happens. Jacob, he says, to add to your point, the people who sunshine pump nonstop in the podcast are insufferable. It's huge that you were critical of the teams when necessary. I mean, Jacob, to me, it's just like, to me, the banter is the fun part. It's the fun part. I don't think there's anything fun about being delusional. I just don't think there's anything fun about, like, if we were to go into this football season, I spent all offseason telling you all Carolina's going to go 12-0 and win the SEC East. I mean, it would be fun for the offseason, right? I mean, can you imagine? Let's live in a hypothetical world for a moment. Can you imagine if I was actually over here plotting that July 5th, when I start my predictions, I had Carolina going undefeated? What, like, can you even fathom that? If I was like, guys, I fooled you. This is the year. Spencer Rattler's winning the Heisman. Carolina is going 12-0 and going to the SEC title. Like, the numbers would go crazy. I mean, it would be the wildest offseason ever, right? But why do I not do that? Because as cool as it'd be for a month or two to hype people up and go wild and holy smokes, like, we'd get into the season and I'd look like a damn fool. And it would be a massive letdown, right? It would be a huge letdown because we were living in delusion for 2 months. So I'd much rather be real, be realistic, set realistic expectations. Because you know what happens when you set realistic expectations? Like last year, 8-4, we were able to label was a great season. And it's because we didn't have unfair expectations. Had I come in saying, well, if you don't win 10 games, the season's a failure, I'd have viewed last year as a failure somehow, some way. Setting realistic expectations, guys, is a positive. Setting realistic expectations is a positive. Brendan says, favorite season was 2012. Like Dalton said, we got to claim that natty now that LSU had to vacate their win over us. Not sure if that's how it works, but sure. Chase Floyd says, if you said that, I'd unmod myself. Hunter Kelly chimes in 12-0. And the bad part is, I think he's serious. Can you even imagine, though? Right? Can you imagine if I was like, you know what? Actually, 11-1, the Gamecocks, This is the year we're winning the SEC. I mean, guys, I cannot wait. I cannot wait until the day where I'm able to go into a season and comfortably, realistically say Carolina's going to win the SEC East. I can't wait. I pray to God that day comes. I pray that day comes. Guys, I mean, I want to pick 12-0. I want to pick 15-0. Don't you? I mean, we all do. But nobody would take you seriously. Like if you're the Gamecock fan that's the sunshine pumper, again, nobody takes you seriously. Because here's the thing, when you're building an audience, what do people want above all else? There are some people out there that want to be sunshine pumped to death. That's a fact. That's a fact. There are some people out there that love living in delusion when it comes to their favorite teams. They don't want to hear anything negative about their favorite team, even if it's true. They take everything personally, right? That's fine. But the majority and what wins in content and what wins in what this what is the word I'm looking for? I'm going off on this tangent. I lost my train of thought. But what wins in the content space and what wins in sport, what wins in everything is being real. Keeping it real. Keeping it a buck. Calling it as you see it. Being realistic. Because people can turn to you and say, at least if nothing else, I may not like what this guy has to say, but he's going to keep it real with me. He's going to keep it real. He's not going to bullshit me. Nobody likes a bullshitter. Nobody. Nobody likes a bullshitter, right? And I'd almost rather, guys, I'm on the side of, I'd rather be on the conservative side, the safe side, and be surprised. I'd rather pick 6-6 and the Gamecocks go 9-3 versus the opposite. I'd rather be pleasantly surprised. So, anyways, Hunter Kelly says, nobody ever knows, Hunter, from your lips to God's ears. Frank says, please, 8-4, I'm taking it to the bank. Hey, I would love 8-4. Brendan says, sorry to break it to you, but you won't be able to pick us to win the SEC East after this season. Brendan, that is a really good point. I guess this is the year, man. I guess this is it. If we're going to make the pick, Brendan, we got to make the pick now. You make a good point. Hunter Kelly says, fine. 10-2, my final offer. I hear you, Hunter. Hey, again, from your lips to God's ears, a double-digit win season, I would take that in a heartbeat, my friend. Give me 10-2. I'll take it. Anyways, guys, we have hit 3 o'clock or about to. We're going to appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Thank you all so much to those who commented over the last 2 days. I apologize for the phone line issues, the headphone issues. If we will have those fixed by Monday of next week. Thank you so much to all the guests. Our guy, Sean of Horn Takes Podcast today. Of course, Mark Ryan in our second hour. And again, thank you all so much for the continued love and support. Hey, listen, appreciate y'all. Have a great weekend. We'll get back after it on Monday. Normal schedule throughout next week, noon to 3. And I'd say we're going to go live Friday. There's no reason not to. We'll chat. We'll conversate all week long. So normal schedule all week next week, noon to 3. In the meantime, stay tuned. All the content bleeding out the eyeballs. Y'all hit that subscribe button on YouTube and the bell icon so you get notifications. Hit the subscribe button on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. And also join the Big Cock Club today, guys, to keep the conversation rolling. Patreon.com/Big Cock Club. That's Patreon.com/Big Cock Club. Or click the link in bio, Big Cock Club, to join today. In the meantime, I'm out of here. Hey, appreciate you guys. Thank you all so much. Have a great weekend, and we will talk to you all on Monday.